Hello and welcome. I am so glad you're here. We have got an awesome freaking episode planned. We're going to talk about redemption arcs and specifically male gendered characters and their redemption arcs because it seems like in a lot of redemption arcs, gender does play a role in how they interact with their society and their culture, but also what or why are the reasons they wish to change within. It's not always gendered, but since it's so often gendered, we thought we would also touch on that. So it's going to be a super cool episode. And to help me today are some fantastic, talented people. You know them. I love them. Laura Nettles. Woo! Charlie Dorset. Woo! And my brother Tom. Hello. It's like I just saw you.
In real life.
Yes. And you know, it has worked out.
You know,
is that the story?
Be the token guy on the group.
Yes, you are our token guy and himbo. You're here to look pretty. Be sure to fluff that beard for me.
I mean, as somebody who embarrassingly performed as the wrong gender most of their life, like I do have a little bit of experience.
But you're not the token guy.
Oh. No, I have been before, and it was really funny because I was so bad at it, and we didn't understand why at the time.
Okay, this has nothing to do with today's episode, but quick story time. Yesterday, there we were at the church cookout, sitting across from this other guy. Like, it was like a circular table. And Tom was literally across from this other guy. And I was like sitting closer to that guy's wife. And we were chatting because we both have taught in public schools. And so we were chatting, but I kept noticing that as the guy is eating his burger, he keeps looking at Tom, even though Tom is not talking because Tom is like literally double fisting 2 hamburgers. So the burgers were good, y'all. It was a surprise. We were all surprised. The burgers were really good. And I'm like, what is happening? Because the way this guy was looking at Tom, it was not how, like, say, in the gay club, the men look at Tom. It was different. And the more I thought about it afterwards, the more I realized that this man was gazing longingly at Tom's beard and all of the unit that is Tom. And I told Tom about it later because we did food delivery afterwards. We delivered for a couple hours while we waited for our appointment to get our COVID booster shots. And I was like, I realized it was not lust. That's what I'm used to when people look at Tom longingly. It's for lust. This was admiration. And I was like, Tom, this man was looking at you like you were an absolute unit of manhood. It was so strange. It was sort of like slightly avaristic. And I just was absolutely shocked because this guy was no nebbish schlub. He was very nicely dressed. Y'all, his name is like one of those names. Those guy names that tell you, how do I say this nicely? He could have been a character on The Simpsons. In a sort of, this is a 2-dimensional character of manhood, you know? That was like sort of his name and his total package. And he is instead looking at Tom like, the virility. I have only seen like my father look at John Wayne that way. And that was what I was like, what is happening? I'm like, Tom, you have become peak manhood. Congratulations. Which, of course, Tom is like, what? No. And I was like, oh, yeah. You are now an absolute unit of manhood. Congratulations. Just like absolute units of cat and bulldog. Guess what? Yeah.
There's no lust quite like beard lust. Like if you've never seen wanton beer lust on the face of a dude, like I don't even know how to describe
It's different. It's different from anything else.
I mean, they got that part right on Gravity Falls.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
Like,
as well as, what was it before that? Dexter's Lab?
or how about This Is Gen Z with their whole beard contest? And somebody trying to, like, get everybody's beards ruined with an errant goat.
What show was it where some guy wanted chest hair? He wanted it so bad, and he made a wish. And it grew so much it filled the entire house, and he ended up dying because nobody could get to him, but he died happy.
I do not know what you are talking about, but I am now fascinated. When you were first talking, I was thinking of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2, when the little boy, you know, the son of the...
I think it was an anime? I don't know.
I was like, I vaguely remember this because, yeah, it was animated. I remember that. But it's like, I can't quite remember what it was.
Yeah, I was just thinking of the guy's son who put a little bit of chocolate frosting on his chest to show he has chest hair.
No.
I was like, oh, but no, he did not die from this.
It may have been a Benabashi Magical Shopping Arcade, but I don't know.
Yeah, it definitely could have been Abanabashi. Dang it, the other one ran on my head.
It'll come to you all later, maybe during our voice chat in the Discord server after the show.
I'll look it up on YouTube. Man dies of chest hair.
Oh, no.
Oh, Google.
That sounds like the least safe search. That you like. Make sure you have your safe search on. I feel like there will be pictures that you do not want to see.
Like, it's one of the things I've missed about not working in IT in a school system. Like, one of the very few perks, there weren't a lot, but it was just seeing all the searches the students did.
Mm-hmm.
And it was always like, go on, let's figure out this story.
Like that. I don't want to say what came to mind. I'm just going to say that there's some serious Rule 34 violations with man dies of beard hair. Like, just, yeah.
But I mean, that actually does sort of lead to the conversation about the maleness of male redemption arcs. Because what we noticed in some, but not all of the stories that we listed this week that we watched, so for instance, in Fight Club and Despicable Me, both of these films do discuss what it is to be male and how they find it difficult to be male and not be villainous. So it does lead to some interesting conversations, though, about gender and not being a total asshat. Maybe just a partial.
Just a skosh of it.
Just a soupçon.
A soupçon.
Of a total jerk. Yeah. Hi, Megan. It's like we just saw you. Megan just scheduled labs and a doctor appointment now to work on my article. Excellent.
So adult-like.
Yes, so grown up. Hi, Eva. Hello, Spence. How goes it? Are you back home yet?
Oh, that's right. You went to make the bread. Somebody may have showed up in chat and showed us the bean live on camera.
Nice. So, Tom, did you want to give a real pitch for this show? Did you have anything in particular? Did I cover it all?
No, this one was you.
I love the mild note of disgust in that. No, this one was you. You wanted to talk about them dirty men.
And women, you are all about the redemption arc.
You know,
My favorite redemption arc is
Yes?
still Zuko from Avatar.
Yes.
I have not watched that.
Yeah, Zuko's redemption is one of the most fascinating just because, one, it's the kind of story you never get in kids' entertainment because it's complex. Because it deals with the trauma with his sister and all of the relationships there, the trauma with his dad, and all the issues there, and him having to realize that he only hated Aang because he was trying to make his father proud. All of his emotions towards this person had nothing to do with that person. And it's not an instantaneous magic redemption, which again, children's media is usually what happens. You know, you get today's the day we save our character, and so magically all of the emotions change. But
so Zuko is a prince who is exiled because he stood up to his dad in a military meeting, and then got half his face blasted off and burned, and so then was exiled
by his father.
Yes, by his dad, and then gets exiled out there with his uncle, who is also kind of in disgrace because he's a general and lost a war.
Okay.
And so his uncle Iroh, is the pinnacle of wholesomeness. Like, oh my gosh, he's just
Iroh is life goals.
Oh gosh, yes, he's amazing.
But that's in part because Iroh has also already had a redemption
Yes.
before the story even starts.
Yes.
He lost his son. Like, he has had a tragic past, but he's pulled through. He's turned around, and he's trying to show his nephew, like, you don't have to live for your family that are horrible to you. Like, there's more to you than this. Like, and I'm here for you every step of the way. And just the whole, screw you, uncle, I'm going back to my family thing. And it was like, oh no. It's just you make so much progress, and then you have the backslide, and then you have the progress again. And it's just this complicated, trying to learn for yourself, and just
every time
trying to turn a good leaf, and then the people that find out who you really are turn on you. And it's like, no.
Every time I think about Avatar, I am astounded that this was a Nickelodeon show. It is such a complex story.
That's probably in part why I never got to watch it when it was first run. I didn't have cable at that point. And I was working crazy long hours between going to school and also running a video store more than full time. I was working 60 hours a week running the video store and also going to school in college full time. So yes, that was probably, I believe that's what it was coming out. And also I could not afford cable, but I'm sure Tom will help me get Avatar.
So I watched a few episodes when they aired on TV as they were coming out, but I never really got into it because I never sat down and watched, because it's not episodic, it's a continual story arc.
Yes.
And so I didn't really understand much of what was going on all the time. And so finally I got to college and I was just taking all GEs, so I was bored. And so I went on the Nickelodeon website and they had all the episodes on their website.
Nice.
So I watched all 3 seasons in 2.5 days.
Oh, wow.
It was so good.
I mean, the only real true tragedy that exists in Avatar: The Last Airbender is trying to sell cabbage in that world.
Oh my gosh.
There is a cabbage vendor that they destroy all his produce so many times throughout the entire series. This man can't catch a break. I don't know what the writers have against cabbage. Yeah, he moves cities trying to escape them, and they just keep showing up.
Oh no.
But the world building is so fun. They have animals that are a mix of 2 animals. like, oh my gosh, they meet a bear, and they're like, is it like a lion bear? Like, what kind of? It's just a bear, and they're like, what is this?
Just a bear? Yeah,
Just a bear. The turtle ducks are so cute.
I love the turtle ducks.
Well,
Yeah.
I will definitely check it out. Absolutely. It sounds super fun.
So you have 2 story arcs that could go through redemption. So you have
Mhm.
Zuko and Azula, his sister. And Zuko is the one that goes on redemption. And Azula is the one that goes down
Full
hard.
psycho route. Let's just be honest.
Yes.
Psycho.
Yeah.
She just goes psychotic more and more. Just refuses change or growth. She shows what happens when you do not change with the times.
Mm.
And especially on the topic for today, what's really interesting about her is it shows how toxic masculinity affects people that are not male in any way,
Masculine
shape, or form.
identifying.
Yeah, because she's not a trans character, but
Yeah.
she has adopted all of the mannerisms of her father,
Mhm.
all of the toxicity of her father. She completely embodies in a way that almost helps you see them in her father, because it's the juxtaposition of seeing a toxic male character that is female.
Mhm.
When you're used to certain gender stereotypes, highlights what is so toxic about the toxic masculinity. And she is just, when she loses it, like I'm just thinking of that last fight with Aang, with Azuko. I mean, when she just loses it, it's one of the most powerful pieces of storytelling, because it feels like you lost something, because you feel like there's a moment where she decides, no, to hell with this, burn it all down. Like you can see, like she thinks for a moment, just like a split second, and then decides, oh yeah, no, I'm not doing the right thing. No.
Spence is right. It's treated like the tragedy that, like, it is not glorified that they win.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, no.
And
that is one of the things I noticed in like these redemption arcs, is when it's really powerful, when it really works, we see at least one parent in this person's past had something to do with why they are to some degree acting so villainous. We see that they did not just spring out of the ground fully formed and causing mayhem and evil in the world. That they were crafted and influenced at the very least by a parent, by a trusted caregiver. And I think that it's really important for these kind of redemption arcs. If somebody is interested in writing that for a character, of we really do need to show their past, at least some part of their past, to understand why they're this way, and also what could make them want to change how they interact with the world. That other people, like support systems, are necessary for this character, any character, to change even a little bit of their aspect of how they interact with the world, or why they interact the way they do with the world. That nobody just independently by themselves is like, you know what? I'm going to quit being such a jerk. I'm going to try to be good right now. Nobody does that. Nobody just springs forth, wakes up one day and goes, I'm going to quit this. This isn't working for me. I'm going to try to be good. Nobody does that. It requires other people like around encouraging and supporting them in becoming more functional.
that's one of the interesting things that the MCU did with Tony Stark's redemption arc, because his entire plot arc from Iron Man 1 to Endgame is his redemption arc, where we, spoilers, but kind of spoilers. his last action in Endgame is to actually not be selfish for once.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it is a true act of selflessness. And to see, because he would not have changed if he wasn't personally impacted and harmed by his own weapons in the first one. It had to happen to him.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's like, well, maybe we are supporting the wrong people. Maybe we're doing the bad. Am I the bad guy? I mean, it's totally the meme, right? Are we the baddies? Yeah, you're kind of the baddies. And watching him throughout the story not realize that there's a wonderful moment that I've seen so much made out of lately in Doctor Strange, where in the first movie, where the Ancient One just turns around and looks at him and says, "It's not about you." And while Stephen finally starts getting it a little bit there, it takes Tony Stark the entire arc to realize this. It takes all of these movies where he's like, maybe it's still a little bit about me, like just maybe just a little bit, like can't it just be a little bit about me? And then finally realizing, oh no, it's not about me. I am not the main character of the universe. The universe is the main character of the universe. And it's really interesting to see how they work that out across all the different things. We're like, okay, well, I can't be selfish with business. Can I be selfish in my relationships? No. Okay. Can I be selfish with my intellectual actions? And getting to see it stripped, getting to see him stripped back layer by layer by layer in each of the films makes for what resulted in a powerful redemption arc for him that, and spoilers for anybody who doesn't know how the MCU works, was not planned from the beginning. It is emergent storytelling. If you don't know how the MCU works, it is emergent storytelling. They really do work movie by movie and try to make connections to sum it all up and make it feel more connected than it was in its original intent. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something that we need to realize, is that toxicity is not one thing. It's not just, oh, here, let me get that poison out. Here, you're fine now. We've extracted the poison. We've given you the antitoxin. Everything is better. No, you're going to be toxic in different ways and have different problems. And redemption is not a one-time magic cure-all. And that's what makes, like, the stories we've talked about so far so powerful. Is Zuko realizes, well, maybe my dad's a jerk, but I still hate everything. The world must burn. And then has to learn, well, maybe the world shouldn't burn because, like, my uncle's in the world and I kind of like my uncle. So, okay, maybe the world shouldn't burn, but I still hate Aang. This is all Aang's fault. Everything is Aang's fault. It's not really my fault. It's never been my fault. It's Aang's fault. Oh, crap. Maybe it was kind of my fault and kind of my dad's fault. My dad was a jerk. Yeah. And I just, and it's just that.
Maybe I don't need my dad's approval.
Yeah, maybe I don't need my dad's approval. And it's so powerful because it's showing it being pulled back in layers. And that's what, if in a really profound redemption arc, that's what you see, is them peeling back those layers of misconception and error that got them to be the baddie in the first place. It's the thing that, if they had done in The Rise of Skywalker, would have actually redeemed that movie. Because it's an interesting idea to think of how would Kylo Ren be redeemed, and you can metacritically add it back in if you want to. And I've seen quite a few video essays that do that, but it's not actually in the text. And that would have made that such a much more powerful redemption if we had seen those get pulled back, like we did for Vader.
Right.
Because we see throughout the story, as each layer gets pulled back, maybe the Emperor isn't such a good guy. Maybe, am I the baddie?
You keep, every time you say "am I the bad," I think about that scene. I can't remember the show, but Tom was the one who originally showed it to me, and It was a British sort of sketch.
Mitch and
show.
Webb.
Yeah. That's exactly what I'm referencing.
Yes, of that is what every time you're like, am I the baddie? Of like
Are we the
of
baddies?
these two Nazis sitting in a trench going, are we the baddies? Maybe we are. No, we couldn't be. You know, like that's what I keep thinking of every time you say
That's the reference I'm making. Yeah.
there.
Is that Little Britain? No, it wasn't Little Britain. It was
No, it was, what was it, Tom? Mitchell and Webb or something?
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it took us a while to find it because, like, originally Tom had found, I don't know if it was a clip or a GIF or something, but he showed it to me, and I'm like, "What the hell is this?" And then we eventually did hunt it down. But yes, that is what I think about of two Nazis sitting out in the field over a cup of something in that cup.
Well, that's the first thing that you have to get redeemed is you have to have that moment of, wait, are we the baddies? Like you have to have that moment of realizing, oh wait, I might be the problem here. Because
and I really see that, like, the beats are so clear in A Christmas Carol. If you are just unfamiliar with the beats of how to show a redemption arc, particularly, you know, like it's just read and write out the beats for A Christmas Carol, because it really, especially the story, the printed version, which is every movie version trims it, is the problem. So you're not going to see all of it in any, and we have looked, like the Muppet Christmas Carol is the truest version of the film, of the book, but they still had to trim because Dickens was getting paid by the word back then. Although that said, the story is not actually that thick. It's like it's what, 100?
It's a thin one.
You can get through it real fast. It's novella size. It's not like a full book length.
Yeah.
But the beats of a redemption arc, that I think honestly it set the tone for the redemption trope forever afterwards. Because ultimately what I really saw was a lot of stories do loosely follow the beats to A Christmas Carol. In the sense of, you need to show how in the present day they are not doing good in the world. And that even people try to point it out in their present day and they're like, I don't care, or fine. And they say horrible things and they maybe even do horrible things. And then we have to then visit their past to better understand, because if you show backstory, readers will then care about the character. I.e., do not show backstories of your monsters, because then the readers will sympathize with your monsters. And then we'll try to ship your monsters. That's a whole nother problem. But if you show backstory, readers will like feel some sort of empathy for your character. And then to then show, so after like you show the backstory, really the backstory is for the reader, not as much the character themselves. They already know their backstory. But then you show the character, how they are really affecting the world, like where they're, what is it, the pivot point? What are they very sensitive to? So for instance, Ebenezer Scrooge, he is sensitive to the plight of little boys. He is sensitive to the suffering and the loneliness and the pain of little boys, because that is what he himself experienced. And so when he sees how Tiny Tim is suffering amid all of this, you know, the wonderful present where they have, you know, chimneys that work. And I'm just trying to like think, how did technology, what was wonderful technology in the early 1800s, but you know, what I'm trying to say, of among all of this splendor and Christmas turkeys and whatever, there is Tiny Tim who is dying because he can't get good medical care because his father cannot afford it. And why can his father not afford it? Specifically because Ebenezer is not paying him even market value. And so this little boy is dying for lack of medical care, and also, quite honestly, for lack of just good food and heat.
Mm-hmm.
And that Ebenezer Scrooge is the direct result of why this little boy is more than likely dying, or at least that's how it's presented to Scrooge, And he interprets it. He's like, oh no, I have become the monster of my own childhood. And then just to make sure this character understands how you really are this bad, then we see, the Ghost of Christmas Future, where he sees even further the implications of it, as well as how he will be remembered. Of, you think your evil was like not really evil. What was it, Tom, we were talking about people when they are doing evil things, they don't call it evil. Nobody thinks they themselves are actually evil. They'll say, oh, I'm just being petty, or I just wasn't going to deal with their crap today. Like, no, you were monstrous to them. That is not you not taking their crap today. And instead, Scrooge sees the implications of how he will be remembered by everybody and what happens to everyone else that he cares about, and how nobody misses him and everybody laughs at him. Again, something many characters are sensitive to, because a lot of people. Okay, so here's what I've learned about men. Men cannot handle the laughter, particularly the laughter of women. Robin Williams said, the best birth control ever is the laughter of women. And I have experimented on people and found this to be very true. Honest to God, if you want a penis to get soft really fast, just laugh at it. The moment you have the unveiling, where somebody's like, ta-da, here it is. Let's have happy fun time. And instead, you start chuckling. Let me tell you, it goes from, so quickly, maybe I have timed it because I have performed illegal psychological experiments on friends. It's okay. We're no longer married. I was curious. Robin Williams said the best birth control is women laughing at men. So I wanted to try it out. And guess what? It really does work. So even when men have tried to sexually harass me, I have laughed at their attempts. And they get all sad and go to the bathroom alone. I have also experimented on men at sci-fi fantasy conventions who tried to sexually harass me. And then, just the laughter, the gleeful joy of a woman who thinks a man is too incompetent or incapable of manliness to actually be a threat. They just walk away. They slink away all sad inside because they feel emasculated when they were sexually harassing not 10 seconds before. It's a very odd thing, but men hate being laughed at, particularly by women. And so again, in A Christmas Carol, Scrooge's housekeeper and her friends are laughing at Scrooge. And he is very upset about this. He is so upset his housekeeper is ridiculing him and making her friends laugh and chuckle and get in on, the salt fest. They're going to read him to filth. And that's what they do. And he is very upset about this. And then just to show him a little further, then he is laughed and ridiculed by his peers, by fellow bankers. And again, this is what really bothers him. Now, there is a part in there where he's also shown, what is it? Deprivation. I can't remember. It's the names of the two little children that the Ghost of Christmas Past shows him. But they're just a stand-in for, essentially Dickens is trying to say that the little girl will turn into a prostitute and the little boy will become a criminal. And that he's also responsible for this. It's not any particular little children. It's just because you are so miserly, this is what will happen to the poor. The poor will continue to do what they have to survive, which means they will do, the underbelly of society. And it's all your fault.
Watch The Inspector Calls.
I don't know.
How's the actor of Remus Lupin in it? It's a British mystery.
I don't think I've seen that.
I have not. I haven't heard of it, but...
Okay, so Remus Lupin is a British detective He comes to a house. It's like super rich family mansion thing. And he's like, so, a woman has died, and it's all your guys' fault. So he goes through one by one with each person in the family, and they realize what they had done to get this woman to get to the brink to off herself. And it was like, holy smokes. So, like, I won't spoil the twist, but just one by one, it's just, oh my gosh. And you see the moment when they realize what they've done and the amount of remorse that they feel, but it's too late. And it's like, gosh.
Like, but my point was just simply that Dickens is that part where Dickens is showing the Ghost of Christmas Future is showing like these two little kids and how they're become so depraved and criminal and all this. That's for the reader. That is not actually for Scrooge. Scrooge is horrified by it. He's like, But that's actually for the reader.
The underbelly.
Yeah, but that is for the reader that Dickens was trying to appeal to. Of when we don't take care of those without adequate resources, they will do criminal things because they have to, but also it makes everything harder for everyone else in society as well. We need to take care of those who cannot give us anything in return. And that was what the point Dickens was trying to make to the readers, but that one is not actually for Scrooge himself, because Scrooge is going to be dead soon. Let's be honest. He's elderly even in the story. He can't do that much. That one's for the reader. And then again, like what you were talking about, Laura, most characters, and I know because, why, yes, in my 20s, I may have experimented on a lot of people because I did not have to go through psychological boards for oversight of my experimentations. They were not technically war crimes, y'all. So anyhow, but like, when you point out to real people the crimes they are committing and how they are hurting other people and how it has led to that other person's destruction, a good, kind person's destruction, not a single one of them will reform or change because, again, they will tell themselves, oh, I wasn't really the one who was doing it, or I did what I had to do. I didn't have a choice. Honey, there's always a choice. But people will, in reality, always protect themselves and minimize their own crimes in their head. Like, that is just how all human beings are. So as a writer, keep that in mind of what are you putting in your story for your reader versus what are you putting in the story for your character? Because your reader is an active audience member. They are the one you're really telling the story to. As much as you love your characters, and I'm sure you love to fantasize, everybody loves to fantasize about what their character does in their off time and how they're living their life or how they're not living their life or whatever that's happening.
By the way, I did check it. It was it's called Ignorance and Want, but it really translates to education and poverty.
Okay, thank you. I was like, they had weird names of like, those are not real people. Nobody names a child Ignorance or Want. At least I hope not.
I don't know. There's some weird names nowadays.
I know there is, isn't there? Like, hey,
You know,
I want to agree with you, but on some level,
but when you use the Bible method to pick a name,
yes,
you end up with children named like that.
Look, Spence, this was how I got through my 20s, okay? This is before my redemption arc. This was me exploring. This was where I was experimenting on the underbelly of local South Mississippi society. I experimented on many racists and other evildoers because they thought I was so white, so I must be similar to them. And if I just kept my mouth shut, they assumed I was on board with them, and then I could conduct my questionable psychological experiments on them. I was a psych student at USM. So.
But I mean, what Gloria, I think, also is really getting at is no villain would ever name their team the villains of villainy, or the evil villains.
Or, the evildoers league, or
the evil League of Evil from
from Super
Dr.
Friends or whatever.
Sing-along vlog.
Yes, or any of those. No one is naming what they're doing evil.
Bad horse, bad horse, bad horse. He's bad.
They might name their stuff something powerful or, implying power, but they're never going to name what they're doing as evil or wrong or bad because nobody doing these things thinks it's actually bad. At
And
the
like,
worst, they will say, I did what I had to do, for everyone's benefit.
and if you ever really want to see a good
Like
usage,
Thanos.
a really good usage of that, go watch the old episodes of Kids Next Door. Of none of the villains in there think of themselves as villains. They are trying to help. They have gotten frustrated, so they are no longer going for consent from the kids they're working on, but they never consider themselves evil. They are trying to help society.
Mm-hmm.
The one and only exception to that rule I can ever think of, and it's because I have a weird obsession with serial killer lore, and that's Richard Ramirez. And him and his uncle, which is who is almost the worst villain in the story. If you don't know his story, Richard Ramirez was the Night Stalker. He violently assaulted women, particularly elderly women, and carved things into them and did forced naughties and stuff. He was a very bad man. But his uncle used to take him out at night and teach him how to stalk women, as if this was how you appeased the Dark Lord. His uncle had this really weird satanic vision of the universe that Richard Ramirez took on, and he thought he was doing the work of evil. He had a very interesting, weird, warped mindset that I can't find another individual like him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's such an anomaly. Like, if you want to know what true evil looks like, this is a man who, in his trial, drew a pentagram on his hand and mocked the victims' families, and then was surprised that he was convicted. Like, he had no more morals whatsoever in his being, and they're so rare that in the history of the world, I can think of one man who might fit that criteria.
I think you also have characters who decide, screw the system, I'm just going to go the complete opposite.
I'm just going to do what I want for me.
Yeah, and so they think of themselves as, like, I'm just putting myself first. So I don't know if they choose to be the villain. Like, Loki did.
Well, see, this is the difference in how do you determine morality? Because, to quote one of my favorite non-binary YouTubers, Aristotelian ethics is so passé.
Oh, honey, I agree.
So, the idea that there is a true good and evil binary in the universe, we construct our morality and our ethics on our own. So even in those cases, though, they're working out of V from V for Vendetta is very clearly, from most standards, a villain. He is not a hero. I don't even think you can class him as an anti-hero. I mean, the stuff he does to... I'm not even going to go there.
He is definitely subscribing to the ends justify the means.
Yes.
Which I just want to point out, only villains do that, but okay, whatever.
But
I have had real life people tell me, well, the ends justify the means, and I'm like, that is how villains talk. No one else talks that way but villains.
Machiavelli didn't even talk that way. The Prince was a satire.
Like, let that be your benchmark.
Like, the fact that people don't get that. Like, the Prince was a satire. He was mad.
We're in a society now where those in charge and with money literally keep saying, without irony in their voice or sarcasm, that poor people need to pull themselves up by the bootstrap. And this is a literal statement that was originally written as mockery, that nobody operates on their own.
Yeah.
Everyone's assisted. You cannot pull yourself over a fence by your bootstraps. You are not pushing against anything. And they now take this as, no, that's how it works. I did it. No one helped me. And it's like, oh, you are even dumber than I realized.
My favorite person I've ever heard say that out loud with the talking was Craig T. Nelson, who said, and I quote, "When I was on welfare, no one helped me."
It's like, what'd you
And I'm
think
just like,
welfare is?
we need to sit you down for a minute with a really good therapist to unpack this sentence.
Mm-hmm.
The welfare was helping you. Society was collectively helping you.
It was keeping you fed and possibly even housed.
You have to say, no, it was when I was on welfare living in government housing. No one helped me. And I had to pull myself up.
What do you think that is? So again, like, just to give you an idea, people will say, like, oh no, what I'm doing is not bad or it's not hurting the world. And they will say it unironically. They will say it with absolutely no sense of the reality of in which they live. So just be aware that, like, there's what you are doing to show your character for them to redeem themselves, for them to be motivated, for your own character to be motivated enough to redeem themselves. And then there's what you show your reader for your reader to then see what your character is doing and the evil they're doing, for the reader to rethink how they're approaching their life or how they're judging what other people do. Every time I see a YouTuber with a picture, a big portrait of Elon Musk in their living room or something, I'm like, what is this nonsense?
My first thought is, who hurt you?
Of, like, again, though, these are the kind of people, these readers are who we are trying to appeal to when we do write redemption arcs. Because, look, the characters live in our heads. And they could honestly live in our heads just living their little shitty lives forever. We try to set them on a course to redeem themselves for the benefit of our readers. So our readers can live many lives without ever having to leave their house or ever having to go out in the world and take these dangerous risks. That's why we write these stories, is for the benefit of our readers. But it's one of these with a redemption arc. For a redemption arc to really feel or to be effective, you need to be thinking about, there's essentially two characters in there. There's the character you're trying to take on a redemption arc, and then there's your reader who you are trying to sort of show their own little taste, a little soupçon of redemption as well. Because that's when readers will be like, I couldn't put the book down, or I kept thinking about it afterwards, and it's really made me, quote, rethink how I approach the world or how I'm judging people like Elon Musk. Whatever it is, that's who we're really trying to get through to. We're trying to give them a little taste of that redemption arc as well. So that, yes, I will admit, I am the kind of person that believes the rich are only good for one thing.
Nom, 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 nom.
Yes, barbecue. Nice little hickory smoke. So
we all just enjoy that.
That's the only thing they're good for, Laura.
Okay.
That's it. They're not even, like, good for the ground, okay? You can't turn them into compost effectively.
Nope.
Too much Botox?
They're just filled with poisons and forever chemicals. It's becoming an issue. So that is, again, like, I really wanted to talk about it from the perspective of, like, writing it. Because so many times I've seen people try to write redemption arcs that doesn't quite work. And they're like, I don't understand exactly what went wrong. I mean, I've heard this from so many writers, even like some big name writers. And it's like, okay, because you're really writing toward two people. You're writing for your character to see their redemption, to see this path you've laid out for them. But you're also writing for your reader to have a little taste of a redemption as well. To kind of see, like, how their society is leading people to behave in a rather evil sort of manner. And the only way it's ever going to change is if enough people start rethinking and going, hey, you know what? Maybe we shouldn't be doing quite so much destructive things or approaching the world in such a destructive mindset. Yes, secrets in the sauce, baby. All right. So, how about we do a little 10-minute break, to give our introverts a little time off. And then when we come back, should we talk about more movies, or should we talk about gender?
Aren't they both the same thing?
Today they are, actually. You're not wrong. We can endlessly talk about this. But anyhow, we'll come back and it'll be fantastic. See you all in approximately 10 whole minutes. Make sure you get something to drink. Maybe a little snacky snack. Just throwing that out there.
And so the question of returning from this from the sprint is, how inappropriate was the version of the song that went through your head to the tune that Glory was just
How
deducing?
dare you tell on me?
I blame
Well,
our
I know
mother.
mine was cursed, but I guess
Our mother is the cause for us.
She had quite a rack.
there's so many versions of that, sets of lyrics to that tune.
And then after breastfeeding 3 children, her rack descended. And in my early 20s, in a dressing room, I was like, I dare you to try to throw him over your shoulder like a continental soldier. And she did. And it worked. And it was like, oh my God. My early 20s were wild, okay?
Yeah, I had the multiverse, say, school age locker room version of that going through my head.
I learned the one from Girl Scout camp because there ain't nothing wholesome about Girl Scouts. There is a more illicit version at Girl Scout camp of this song, and it involves feminine products. And no, that one is like a bridge too far for me.
I found out that last year there was a music video that was done in the style of But I'm a Cheerleader,
Oh dear. Oh dear.
called Silk Chiffon
Oh dear.
by an artist named Muna. And Phoebe Bridgers shows up.
Oh wow.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, but I'm a Cheerleader is probably as close to perfection as you could get for a movie about topics like that.
Definitely one of the most subversive ones I've ever known.
Oh yeah, that one definitely got me through some difficult times as I tried to navigate my own sexuality.
I feel like in discussing gender and sexuality, we could literally do an entire 3 hours just on that movie. Just unpacking all of the things. And for anybody who may not have seen it, Laura, Zuko's in it. The actor who voices Zuko is one of the heroes of the story.
Nice.
He runs the Gay Liberation Front. He becomes one of the main people in that, what they call themselves.
Yeah. I can't remember because, to be honest, there's 2 movies I sort of spliced together that people look at me weird, but in my head it's the same universe and the same writers almost. And that's But I'm a Cheerleader and the movie Saved.
I was just thinking Saved. I almost said it.
They really do seem like they're in the same universe.
Yep.
So like I sometimes forget which scene is from which movie.
That may be my favorite Macaulay Culkin movie of all time.
Yeah.
He's so good in that. That's the movie that you watch. If you don't know that Macaulay Culkin can act, watch Saved.
Of course, if I may say you, my favorite Kieran McCulkin movie is Scott Pilgrim versus the World.
Yes.
As
he is the star of that movie, no matter what any movie poster will tell you.
As the gay who can text message in his sleep.
The latest
on a T9, no less. Do you realize the skill and magic required? To text.
I haven't texted like that in a long time.
I swear, I think it was a flip phone. Like,
It's so good.
But I mean, Scott Pilgrim also really showcases well that.
Do you realize how many people don't realize Scott Pilgrim is not a good character, not a good guy?
Well, and the ones who do are like, why do you like that movie? He's such a toxic character. And it's like the whole point of the movie is that he gets redeemed. He redeems himself, even.
Yeah.
Of the whole point of a redemption story is the character has to start thinking that they are fine, that there is nothing socially wrong with them. As much as their friends may constantly go, dude, aren't you like in your mid-20s and you're dating a high schooler?
Well, you mean like his sister, who's like, scandal.
One of Anna Kendrick's best roles.
I concur. I absolutely concur.
But it goes through.
Everyone is so good in that movie.
Yes, it was definitely one of those great casting movies.
Yes.
Because
talk about a
everyone
talented
goes
casting
on.
director.
Yeah, everyone goes on to become really well known.
Well, the thing that gets me about that movie, because a friend of mine and I had a long conversation about it, because we were trying to figure out, like, we were like, there's something here that we're not getting, and we just like, why do we love this so much? And we realized that the X's that Scott is fighting against are basically the levels of toxic masculinity.
Yeah.
From the controlling boyfriend who, like, from the one who's over controlling, the one who pretends to be sensitive just to get what he wants, of course, the ultimate complete narcissist at the end, which I love that he has to actually team up with his opposite side to defeat. Like, he literally has to embrace his shadow. Like, there's layers to this movie, y'all.
Yeah, no, let me do this.
Nigga Scott.
It's so good. But yeah, there's so many layers to this movie that really get missed because it has such a whimsical goofiness to it that is necessary so that it isn't preachy.
Yes.
That's how it defeats we were talking about Audrey Plaza and Anna Kendrick's characters that are constantly and Kieran Culkin's, who are constantly calling him out on his BS. If there wasn't so much whimsy to this movie, it would feel so heavy and preachy. It would be like in that level of like Girl Interrupted, where it's just like, I have a message for you today, and you are going to sit down and you are going to listen to it now. And allowing it to have that video game goofiness that it has diffuses that preachiness. When you meet the vegan, oh my goodness.
Gelato's not vegan? Chicken's not vegan?
Milkshakes aren't vegan?
Brandon Routh, who is, I think, an underappreciated actor. I have loved him in so many things. If you've not seen his role in Lady Thunder, if you've not seen Lady Thunder, oh my God, you have to see Lady Thunder. But his character in that is so, he plays literally the role he was born for, the ultimate himbo, which again, he plays in this, but with the superpower vegan trope added on top, where he's the virtue signaling white knighter side of toxic masculinity.
And that's part of why I liked him so much as Superman. I thought he actually did a good job playing the wholesome part of Superman. That, oh yeah, no, that's too passe. We can't have good heroes.
Yeah.
But I thought he did that part really well. Of Superman is just genuinely good. That is the one saving grace for everyone on Earth. But instead of ending up in Injustice world.
You're not wrong. I don't know if you could hear Brian in the other room. If he's not, he's Homelander. That's what he said. And yeah.
And Lex Luthor is right.
And Lex Luthor is right. Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, like, I always feel like the most controversial thing I can ever say is I like Brandon Routh as Superman.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Because I rather enjoyed that movie. I like how it found a way to play with the continuity of the original films and continue going.
I mean, the only problem I really have with it is just the whole Lex Luthor part. And
Yeah.
Lex Luthor's been to jail, so Lex Luthor goes full. I've been to jail, man, and shanks Superman. Like just straight up prison shanks Superman. Because that's what he learned from prison. Don't send supervillains to prison; they learn new skills.
I'm trying not to show them that.
Yeah. Brent said it does what Warner Brothers keeps failing at, and it takes the toxic masculinity out of Superman.
Mhm.
Because they keep, like, why you would bring Zack Snyder in to do. I'm not getting off on that tangent again, but yeah, the
All
thing,
toxic.
yeah, it's toxic all the way down.
Mhm.
And if you don't understand that, a really good way to understand toxic masculinity is it's available online because he posted it in a rage. Read James Gunn's script for the first zombie movie that Zack Snyder did. I always want to say Day of the Dead, but it may have been Dawn of the Dead. I can't remember. It's one of the Dead movies that he did that was a reboot. And then watch the movie that Zack Snyder made from it. And watch how certain characters are very different in the movie than they are on the page, that had their dialogue specifically edited and changed to make them more toxic, to make them more just vile and hateful and mean and spiteful. And if you want to see the difference between what is toxic masculinity, it's a great way to get there, to see the difference, because it's not in the original script. And James Gunn was shocked when he saw the movie, because the whole homophobic pastor thing was a joke in the screenplay, not the actual reason the zombie apocalypse is happening, because he's right.
Versus, Gloria and I were talking last night about Fight Club and how Chuck Palahniuk's story in the book versus David Fincher's version of the movie, and the characters change a lot. Of many ways, David Fincher ended up being less toxic with a lot, except for Tyler Durden, who becomes this toxic character.
Yeah, he made Tyler Durden character far more toxic than how he was in the book. Is this my cue to like get into my whole thing?
I know you want to.
Why do you
I
think
hope
I'm being
not.
so silent? I'm just. I was.
Okay. You know I'm not good with subtle cues. The answer is this, Glory. Okay. All right. Fight Club is another movie I've paid a lot of therapists to talk to me about. So, here we go. Fight Club came along in my life, the movie, because I watched the movie a couple years before I read the book. So the movie is what really started me on a whole journey. Because I watched the movie at the Dollar Theater. That's right, when movie theaters had Dollar Theaters. Woohoo! Love them. In its third or fourth run. That's when I first watched Fight Club. Because I think when Fight Club originally came out, I was living in the Philippines. But when I came back, I watched it at the Dollar Theater. And it was like, oh my God. Because I too was, at the time, at 18, 19 years old, I was grappling with a lot of this. A lot of what's going on and what is the subtle underlying issues that the characters are having in the movie. I too was dealing with. I think overall what most appealed to me about Fight Club was how angry everyone in the film is. Because I too, as a newly minted adult, was feeling so much anger. I was so upset at this really shitty hand I had been dealt of, hey, you're an adult, go out and live the world. And I'm like, I do not have the skills, and let alone the resources or the support to be anywhere in the world and survive, especially while also trying to avoid other people who are trying to prey on me. And I was so angry about all of it. And also I was so messed up from my own upbringing. And at the time, very much like, okay, so if you're really into Fight Club, then you know about there's a whole like series of websites and bulletin boards about Fight Club online. But essentially, there is a Fight Club movie subculture.
Yep.
Don't at me. And so there's the Tyler Durden character played by Brad Pitt, but then there's the other character. Technically, the other character that Edward Norton plays has no name. But in online forums, they call him Jack because there is a scene where he does say to his boss, "I am Jack's complete lack of surprise." So for the ease of discussion, we shall now always call him Jack. So there's Jack, and there's Tyler Durden, and there's Marla Singer. There's a lot going on online about discussions about these characters, and the fact that there's a whole subculture that genuinely believes that Jack, Tyler Durden, and Marla Singer are all the same person.
Yep.
That a lot of this is just happening inside his head. And that he has multiple personalities. And then there's others who do not subscribe to that and rather, look at these characters as separate characters. I am not here to like winnow out. However, I do want to say that recently, a couple years ago, I found out that Chuck Palahniuk had been sort of outed. And so then officially came out as gay or queer at least. And Chuck even in an interview, which I did find online, talked rather extensively about his longtime partner, who he met right before he started writing Fight Club. And with this context, the book Fight Club makes so much more sense because, yeah, I could definitely, and again, I do want to point out I am just doing conjecture because Chuck Palahniuk, as far as I know, has not actually confirmed all of this. So just understand these are theories that I'm not the only one who has these theories, but it does kind of click into place for me that really these are conversations between Chuck Palahniuk and his longtime partner when their relationship was just starting. I believe they met at like some sort of trucking mechanic company. A very uber masculine environment, according to Chuck. And it makes sense that Chuck was at the time, since he was, I think in his early to mid 20s, really grappling with his own masculinity. And also from what I gather, his father, as well as our American culture, taught him, but like, again, I'm assuming this in part because I've never grown up as a male, that
Yes.
to love a man, you cannot be masculine. And so he's grappling with his love of this partner, or who will eventually become his longtime partner, but also wanting to be a masculine man. And a lot of the book in particular does try to winnow this out. You really, once you know this fact about Chuck's personal life, so much makes sense. Also, you do kind of have to know Gen Xers. So for the younger people, I just want to point out, there was a Gen Xer style culture that I would not say really exists that much anymore for several reasons, including the Gen Xers grew up and started families and stopped doing this, but also because pandemics and everything. But what used, like the culture I grew up in, because I was born right at the switchover between Gen X and millennial culture. So most of my friends were older than me, and they were all Gen Xers. So Gen Xers are were the kind of people when they were young, in their teens and 20s, who regularly had parties everywhere, like the forest,
Yep.
a cow pasture, not their cow pasture, a random cow pasture that they did not share with the owner, but they'd have these parties in the middle of the night. So, presumably the farmers are asleep a mile or two away and won't hear everybody partying in a cow field with cows sleeping. I don't know.
You're
Anyway,
bringing back memories.
I know, like seriously, I can almost smell the Jim Beam and the fruit
Mhm.
concentrate. Don't ask. That was my personal friend. But anyway, Gen Xers partied all the time. Like, this was how they coped with the stress of, again, being born into an incredibly unjust world and an incredibly unjust American culture. So they would party like Friday and Saturday nights in particular. It wasn't all night. It would always start after the stores or the mall closes, after the food service, the like fast food restaurants close. And that's when they would party. So it would be middle of the night. And what ended up happening was you end up mingling and getting to know, because mostly people are sitting in chairs, folding tailgating chairs, or on the cars, or sitting on tailgates. And they're intermingling with everyone else in this lower working class environment in their local area. You end up mingling with everybody. That is a thing I'm going to definitely defend about Gen X culture, is you really get to know everybody who makes, I guess at the time it was between like $5 and $15 an hour. You get to know everybody in this pretty big strata in your local town and economy. So you end up meeting everybody who works at the movie theater, everybody who works at the mall, everybody who works in any fast food joint and like cheaper restaurant in town. Every single line cook, like every single line cook in your town, pretty much. You
You're
end
not
up
wrong.
meeting what?
You're not wrong.
You end up meeting all these people. And Chuck even said in past interviews that Fight Club, all of these, like where he's talking about like the baggage handlers, and he's talking about like the catering food service folks and all these people, these were all his friends. These were people that he regularly went to hangouts and parties with. That's what he's talking about, is these Gen X parties. You meet everybody who makes below a certain like wage line. And because these impromptu parties, you really do mingle with like like 20 to 25% of your local town's society, really.
Yeah.
And you just, what are you going to talk about except about your new shitty job? That's what everybody used to do. Was, well, so what's it like working at McDonald's versus what's it like working at Burger King? And there's both fry cooks at the local McDonald's and the local Burger King sitting there sharing beers together and talking to everybody about the differences in their jobs and like all the dirty secrets in their jobs. They're all talking about it at these middle of the night pasture parties or forest parties or whatever. But it's the same with like the retail ones. When is a new sale coming in? Or, yeah, you should totally come. I can give you my employee discount. I work on these days. They're all forming friendships and everything. So that's a lot of where Fight Club comes from, is this culture where everybody was partying in the middle of the night at various locations and getting to know each other. And Chuck has said that's where a lot of Fight Club came from, was just listening to his friends talking about their jobs. And that's where all these, quote, secrets come from in the book and then in the movie that he then, like in the book, look, there's hardly a plot in the book. Just be aware. David Fincher did a lot to pull it all together into the movie.
I say the book was originally written as short stories at a chapter at a time that were then arranged into some form of timeline, but they were really written a chapter each, and regardless to the placement in the story.
Yeah.
They were all short stories.
So, again, like you kind of have to understand the culture that this book was written in and this book was born into, because that's where a lot of it's coming from. And yeah, I too had heard, that was actually one of the things that appealed to me when I saw the movie. Like, so for instance, when they're talking about the cigarette burns on the film and how you could intersplice things into the films, I had already heard about that already at that point from some of like the people who worked, the guys who worked in the projection rooms at the Dollar Theater, of when you get these really older films, when they are coming through, you'll find that they are so spliced together and then the weirdest stuff will be interspliced. It was not necessarily genitalia. Sometimes it was just weird stuff. And honestly, people would splice in 1 or 2 or 3 little frames in there just so that people knew they had been there. Like, it was kind of odd, but when you really do feel like you have a truly dead-end miserable job that is barely keeping you alive. It is not even true subsistence. You just want somebody to know you were there. And so since, you're not likely to get caught, and also most other projectionists are not going to report you, because again, that would require paperwork, and ain't nobody doing that. They're not going to tattle. It was just this sort of little subculture thing among older movies, because the distribution houses do not go through all of the films once the rentals are returned, to make sure that they're fine. They just wait for the next next theater that rents it to complain if something's wrong. That's all. So all of that really kind of appealed to me, since I knew some of this was already true. And then ultimately, Jack very much was grappling with this idea of masculinity that his father had given him. And that's more apparent in the book than in the movie. And I, too, was so mad at my parents about how they had raised me and the ideas they had given me, that I definitely, once I got out there in the world, realized how dysfunctional they are and would not prepare me to actually live out there in the world. But I was not yet ready to confront my parents or even admit to myself how mad I was at my parents. So instead, I was just mad at society, which is exactly what Jack is doing, too, particularly in the book. And it appealed to me. It definitely did. Also, I too grew up with this. Brad Pitt in the movie is like this embodiment of what is the idealized American masculinity.
Yep.
Everything from the abs to the clothes to the give a damn attitude. The eating with his mouth open while talking to you. He doesn't care about manners. Manners are not masculine.
Okay, but that just never changed with Brad Pitt for the next 25 years.
This started him on a path. But I too grew up with this is Brad Pitt is supposed to be, but the Brad Pitt Tyler Durden character is supposed to be this epitome of masculinity. And once I saw it on screen, I'm like, he is such an asshole. Also, by the way, in the book, the Tyler Durden character is so different. The Tyler Durden character in the book is really more like a guide, and is far more compassionate than David Fincher's version of Tyler Durden.
Which anyone familiar with Fincher's work?
Yes.
I mean,
it is easier to better understand that if Tyler Durden character in the book is actually a placeholder for Chuck Palahniuk's lifelong partner, that makes a lot more sense, even how they got together, because the Tyler Durden character in the book is so much kinder and compassionate and gentle in trying to get our main character to see this idea of masculinity you have is holding you back and making you miserable. It's not helping you move forward or be loved or feel fulfilled or even find your purposes in life. And again, that was very appealing to me. But the movie, though, is fascinating because, again, finding out that Chuck Palahniuk, let us say, at least had a queer romantic partner, which I did not know for years because I missed it when Chuck was outed. To see that David Fincher then tries to put this little fudge ripple of heterosexuality back into the movie. The confusion about, because the book and most of the movie is so homoerotic. It is something that has taken me years to better understand of, in American masculinity in particular. If you wish to be touched, if you're a man and you wish to be touched by another man, the only way you can do it while still remaining manly men together is if you touch in violence. You can only have physical contact within the context of violence, hence Fight Club. Versus that is not what I grew up in. I simply was not that aware that is how over the top American masculinity had gotten, or had always been, rather, that you can only be touched in violence. It's because it's look, Chuck, it's called BDSM. Y'all are y'all need to just go to a BDSM munch. You don't have to beat the crap out of each other every week. It's cool.
I think there's something to be said, though, especially for the contrast between the book and the Fincher movie, how much toxic masculinity has to deal with no homoing society.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's this weird thing, and that I don't, because one of the core definitions of masculinity for such a long time in the West has been this, but not in a gay way. Like,
Yeah.
I think of that character from Orgasmo. You know, I don't want to sound gay or anything, but because he prefaces everything he says in the movie, whether or not the thing that follows could ever sound gay or not.
Yes.
With, I don't want to sound gay or anything, but, and I remember that guy from the 90s and early 2000s because they existed. Because as homosexuality was becoming more prevalent in society as far as visibility was concerned, there was this equal and opposite reaction from society to hyper aggressively no homo all of the characters that we could. And I think, you know, just in reference to both Fight Club and what we've talked about with some of the versions of Superman, that's Zack Snyder's whole thing is, no, these aren't gay. They're hyper masculine. Yeah. I think I need to show you some websites because I think you've confused hypermasculinity with something else here.
Mm-hmm.
But this fear that you might be compassionate, loving, caring, have feelings that aren't, I'm going to steal your girlfriend or beat you up about another man, are like, I don't want to say the original sin of toxic masculinity. That was a misinterpretation of Stoicism that happened in the Middle Ages, followed by a complete distrust for nature and anything natural that came from the Black Death. But this aggressive, but is not gay.
Yes.
You know, what does it matter if it, like, if somebody thinks you're queer and you're not, it doesn't affect you, and it shouldn't affect you in any way. The only reason it does affect you in any way is you are so aggressively saying that is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a weird self-fulfilling prophecy that adds this seed of all that is toxic to what's going on right now.
Well, come on though, but it is right there with, you know, Gilbraith and Orson Scott Card,
yep,
and the like, in this whole, you know, to summarize it as short as possible, methinks thou dost protest too much, because the rest of us don't have this problem. What are you talking about?
Yeah, like dudes can just hold each other and comfort each other and it not be sexual.
And just like I have slept in beds with a lot of other people, men and women, I never felt the urge to assault them.
Or spoon them. That's the
okay, I may have felt the urge to spoon them, or
like,
why won't they put an arm on me? You know, like,
am I not cuddly enough?
I'm a big teddy bear. Why will you not hold me?
But you know, versus the way you always hear them talk, it's always this. But the assaults will happen. It's like, not for most people. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
And, you know, this goes back to the original definition of platonic love. Like, can you imagine? Socrates had so much self-control, he could lay in bed next to a little boy and not assault him. That's what platonic love was. It's you have so much self-discipline and respect for the other person. You're not going to physically assault them when they're asleep. Origin stories are weird, y'all.
It really makes you wonder about the definition of platonic solids, doesn't it?
I'm not even going to go there.
But I mean, this, because if you don't believe me, read the Symposium. It's a fun read because it's nothing but a bunch of drunk Greek philosophers negging on each other for like very few pages. It's a very of all of Plato's work, it is definitely the shortest. and the most easy to read because it's just a bunch of dude bros drinking wine and discussing love because, you know, as you do. But yeah, it's aggression has been added to the virtue list for masculinity in the West. And while testosterone can have aggressive tendencies, it does. Whoever wrote that plot arc in the L Word where one of the characters transitions into a boy and just becomes an abusive monster needs to relook at what testosterone actually does to a human being. This is the heart of toxic masculinity. Yes, it can make you more assertive, more aggressive. That's
Have some
one
impulse controls.
Yeah. But it does not turn you into a monster. And there's this really interesting thing when you look at various models people have come up with over the years of how we have changed our basic myth structure over time. And all of the earliest myths that we can find, the oldest ones that we can date and say that these are way, 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 way back, always involve fighting off nature. Like there's chaos out there. We got to kill the dragon. There are monsters coming into town all the time trying to eat us. Our heroes are the ones who save us from the monsters. And what I find really interesting, especially when you look at Fight Club, because I think Fight Club really, the movie, exemplifies this. The modern myth has turned that on its head, where the real heroes are the monsters that are running around in the house with us in this weird toxic masculine way. I don't know if that made any sense at all. It did in my head. But you see this kind of glorification of these monsters. And it's, when you're talking about Fight Club, it's almost a Rorschach test where you get to find out about the soul of the person you're talking to. Because I know so many people who think that Brad Pitt's Tyler Durden is the apex of what a man should be. And he is a toxic, villainous, monstrous terrorist. Does nobody stay to the end of the movie? Does nobody stay to the end of the movie? Like, he's that. The people that think that he is the hero, the good guy, the model that we should be aspiring to, really missed the point of the film. But it shows where our society is going in this aggressive no homoing. I think that maybe that states it better than what I said before.
I just, as I've gotten older, I have finally come to understand and realize, and I'm still working on the succinct response. But anyone who ever says no homo, I really want to respond, oh, but you thought about the homo way. The part where that just already crossed your mind. Make some peace.
Yeah, you're already partially there.
I mean, it's one of the reasons why I don't talk about how much I've watched Fight Club and read Fight Club, how many times I've read Fight Club. Because the other people I'd meet in my life who really liked Fight Club, either the book or the movie or both, do not understand Fight Club. And do not understand they are admiring and glorifying a freaking terrorist. That these are not good things. And that doing all of these negative, destructive things is bad. I mean, that is the point of the book. Is the Tyler Durden character in the book is trying to get Jack to see you are destroying yourself with your idea of how you should behave and who you should be with and who you should love. It is destroying you. You are going to just fall apart and there not be enough left to put back together. And that this is what this character is doing is they are going on this destructive path. And then here is this guy, Tyler Durden, going, hey, have you thought about the implications of your behaviors? Both your behaviors towards yourself as well as your behaviors outward towards society and other individual people. Also, just seriously, the Marla Singer character and how Chuck Palahniuk has talked, because Marla Singer was actually a real person that Chuck Palahniuk knew, I think, in middle school, who, according to Chuck, bullied him. Although, quite honestly, and again, this is my conjecture, I really think Chuck was so wrapped up in himself, he was not aware of how inconsiderate that he himself was being. Also, it is not easy to be a woman or a girl in this world, and Chuck has definitely not been sympathetic to that. But the fact that Chuck Palahniuk genuinely, I gather, at least through the 2000s, still hated this childhood person he knew, Marla Singer, and he named her by name in the book, and hates it that everybody likes the Marla Singer character in the movie. Hates it. He absolutely is still upset. Is like, Chuck, I don't think you understand that you put in the book why you don't like Marla Singer, which is she's a faker, and you're afraid she will attract other people to realize you're a faker too. That he's masking. He's been masking his whole life that he's not queer. He's trying to act butch, trying to act all hetero, no homo-y, and afraid other people will realize it, and feels that Martha Singer is not as effective of a faker as a masker. And that through scrutiny, through other people scrutinizing Marla, it will attract attention to him. Of like, Chuck, you have so much you still need to work out. But nevertheless, David Fincher trying to make the whole Marla Singer character and Jack and Tyler this sort of heterosexual love triangle thing. Fascinating stuff. I love the heteros. They're like, we could like kind of ripple this in. It'll be fine.
You think they'll notice if we make them a couple? Make them couple goals? Nobody will notice. It'll be fine.
It'll be totally fine. It's totally fine. It's not homoerotic. Not at all.
Versus, to show how much, Fight Club is a not as much a litmus test as it is sort of a dark mirror of, it does reflect what is the person watching it frame of mind. In my head, I always ended up kind of with the thought that Marla was, Tyler was the masculine side of Jack and Marla was just the feminine side of Jack. And they are battling it out for Jack. Don't be so hard on yourself and stop being so destructive in the world. Mm-hmm. Is what it always ended up feeling like to me versus, this weird heteronormativity they put in there. It didn't make any more sense.
That moment where you're oddly proud that you're not the one that said heteronormativity for the first time in the stream.
Because Marla shows a lot of compassion in the movie version.
Like
especially.
Even though you really do see how Jack is keeping people away from him emotionally. He anytime so for instance, Meatloaf's character, I can't remember the character's real name, but I just think it was Big Moosey. But they are friends, and yet we see how Jack still tries to keep, even though they have embraced more than a few times, and that Jack has been comforted by the embrace of Big Moosey. Still, Jack tries his best to keep Big Moosey away emotionally. And that anytime Marla tries to have a more intimate conversation with Jack, he blows up at her and becomes an asshole again, because he is really trying to keep her at a distance. That this is how he's living his life, emotionally isolated. And again, that is a good sign of somebody who definitely has yet to have the redemption. Because in order to self-redeem, you have to be vulnerable. It is truly about that run to emotional safety. You have got to be open and flexible. And so if you are still keeping people at a distance, never really being honest and open with other people about anything about yourself, then people cannot comment. People cannot have honest conversations with you about what you are doing or even your thought process. We see this with Jack. We see this again and again in his behavior. And that as he does start allowing like more intimate conversations in, we do see his redemption. He starts really starting to see how the path he is on is destructive. And if anything, he is right in line to destroy himself far more than his father ever did.
Vulnerability is like the number one mortal sin in the eyes of the toxically masculine.
It is the reason I've talked about this film and the book so many times with my therapist, is because I understood that, like, to have good, strong relationships, you need to be emotionally vulnerable with those you are closest to. And yet I wanted to run for the hills. I did not want this. It felt very dangerous. I felt that was going to be my destruction, not my own behaviors were going to destroy me. And so, yeah, having to have this conversation with so many therapists about this, but this feeling of wanting to crawl out of my skin, I feel like it's not working. If every time I try to be like emotionally open and honest with someone, with a friend, and all I want to do is jump out of my skin and head for the hills, like, this is not working. And my therapist going, okay, let us break this down bit by bit. Okay. And having to get coached a lot about this, because again, I was definitely not raised to be open and honest emotionally with anyone. I was taught growing up by my own parents that it is dangerous to be open and honest in an emotional manner, that all I was ever going to get was pain and suffering, and if anything, exposed and then ridiculed and then punished.
It's one of the very revealing things about toxic masculinity, where just like any virus, the first thing it does is it attacks the stuff that could stop it, that could cure it, that could heal a person. It attacks that first. And as a social contagion, it does the very same thing. It attacks vulnerability so that you can't heal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really interesting to see how this plays out in various film franchises and works of various writers. The one thing that for me has always made like the Fast and Furious movies hard to read, as far as like the question of how toxic are these men, is that they all have a subplot where they are allowed to be vulnerable and tender. All of them, whether it's The Rock's relationship with his daughter or Vin Diesel's relationship with Letty, or they all have a vulnerable storyline that's in there that adds as it's like this weird thing that kind of buffers it from feeling as toxic as it probably should, considering the beef between The Rock and Vin Diesel. Like those movies, they're contractually obligated. Neither one is allowed to have more screen time, and both must seem equally as badass. Like that's literally in their contract. Their contract includes the phrase badass. Like they literally wrote this in there, right? Like there's a toxic thing in the background that is like weirdly buffered in the movies with this ability that they gave the characters to be vulnerable. And it's not just Toretto giving a speech about family, which he does in every movie. It's that we see it in his relationship to Letty. We see it in his relationship to others, which softens him in a way that a 1980s version of these movies would not have had. And yeah, even Jason Statham's character, his relationship with his mother and his brother and whatnot, it even gets kind of softened there. And you see this in the works of James Gunn, where a lot of his characters could be read as toxically masculine, but he gives them these just tender hearts. These whether it's in the Guardians of the Galaxy or in Peacemaker or in the oddly compelling relationships in his version of the Suicide Squad, or any of the movies that he's done, where they are exhibiting very often a hyper masculine persona, but they still have a tenderness and a vulnerability that kind of pulls them away from, I'm not going to say necessarily out of toxicity, but pulls them away from it.
Mm.
And you can see in Peacemaker, especially, where the plot of that is the redemption of a toxic man. It's the fact that he can be vulnerable, the fact that he can feel his feelings. Like, he doesn't show them as much as he should. He learns over the course of season 1 to show them more. And we'll probably see more of that in future seasons. But he can still feel them, unlike his father, who feels nothing. And that juxtaposition where we see the redemption of Peacemaker in the show, and it's, especially compared to his father, it's done through this vulnerability. He wants friends. He wants connection. These very human things that are often denied to masculine characters that turn them toxic. They either deny it to themselves or the culture that they're in denies it to them. And yeah, vulnerability is a great way to get a character out of this, which is also why we get bad tropes like fridging the girlfriend and stuff, because it's a shorthand to say, see, they're vulnerable, they care, their girlfriend died, and we move on.
Versus often a character who is already somewhat toxic is not going to have a big redemption arc if they lose their main emotional support.
Yep.
They need that emotional support to help them keep moving forward, to support them in their endeavor to be less toxic. They need somebody, at least, to be able to have those intimate conversations with.
And this is the movie series I would love to see DC make, because one of the best fall redemption stories I have seen in DC Comics is what happened to the OG Green Lantern, where he becomes super ultra mega villain for reasons. Like, they show the trauma that causes him to turn to villainy. They show all the evil that he goes through, and this protracted redemption arc for him, where even the universe is like, oh no, you are atoning for this. And when he is killed for being super ultra mega villain, the universe makes him come back as the Spectre. And no, you have to help people and put things right, because you broke the unit. You broke a lot of things. And he has to learn through helping others. Oh yeah, I kind of was the monster the whole time. It's a really interesting arc for Hal Jordan that they put him on, that I would love to see actually done in the movies, because it would be so different from most of what we see in superhero films. You know, show his origin story where we see him become the hero. Show the movie where he becomes the villain, where he becomes Parallax and does all the bad things and has to be defeated at the end. And then show him as the Spectre. There's your trilogy right there, where he has to earn his eternal rest because he was so vile, and he has to see what he did that made him vile, that made him bad, through helping others. The story I doubt will ever get made, but
you never know. You never know what the future holds.
Well, as long as the Zaz Man is in charge of Warner Brothers. If it can't be a reality show, it probably won't get made.
Yeah, I did not see that coming.
Yeah.
Anywho, well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I know we're going to talk about Despicable Me, and essentially something that Tom and I stumbled across, which is French ideas of masculinity versus American ideas of masculinity. They are not the same. As well as, you know, the beats in Despicable Me for the redemption arc are very easy to see. They're very easy to follow along. So they're very watchable. Let's be honest. Despicable Me is still a fun movie.
You did put newspapers down for the girls. Come on now.
Oh, hey, let us not even forget the little, doggy food bowl filled with candy, like overflowing with lollipops and Starlight mints, y'all. Like, Agnes was happy.
And adorable.
Oh God, yes, so sweet. Oh, those kids. So I know we're going to talk about that, and beyond that, I figured that we will all riff. So be sure to bring back with you after our break everything you want to talk about redemption arcs, because that we pretty much have covered everything that was on my agenda. Unless anybody just wants to geek out about The Good Place. Because Michael's redemption arc is actually kind of fascinating, but I know that not everybody has watched it, and not everybody has 4 seasons to devote to their life to like watch this incredible redemption arc for Michael. But I hope everybody has. Huh?
It is such a good show.
It is. It's super fun. I do love Eleanor versus Michael and their redemption arcs, their competing redemption arcs, honestly. I've never thought to be comforted by the taste of nacho flavored tears. It just has never occurred to me that this would comfort somebody as they cry. My tears taste like nacho cheese. Like, oh, okay. I mean, you live your life. But also, during our quick little break, hey, do you have something to eat? How about something to drink? We are a hydrate or dihydrate community.
I ate a whole can of corn in the last one.
Nice. Look, that's delicious food.
Brian is making pot pie and just brought me the fried chicken skin that he rendered for the schmaltz. So, crunchy during this break.
Well, enjoy your gribbon. Anyhow, we'll see y'all in approximately 10 minutes. Mud, mud, glorious mud. Nothing's quite like it for soothing the blood. So follow me, follow, down to the hollow. And there shall we wallow in glorious mud.
Roy has been fed.
Ah, lovely.
But has he gotten enough carbs?
Well, there's an awful lot of freeze-dried turkey on that one.
How did everybody's break go? Okay.
Sat there watching him eat, so he would eat.
Feeling better after, what would you call that? A eventful visit to the bathroom?
I would have just said a break after a word from our sponsor.
Feels so much lighter.
Charlie, how was your gribbin?
It was so good. And I finished another card for the Oracle deck.
Oh, wow.
So
Very nice. I also got a little bio break, and then, oh, did I grab these as my snack for later? Yes, I did.
I'm addicted to bugles. It's a problem.
Yes.
Bugles are okay, but the caramel bugles are a problem to
That
stop.
is crack. That is delicious, wonderful crack. Those caramel bugles, if you ever see them and you feel like dancing with the devil, get them.
Forget Pringles or Lay's. You can't stop at just one with bugles caramel.
No.
And also, I quickly discussed with Tom that making chicken pot pie for dinner tomorrow night sounds so really good.
I am very excited. I did not know that we were going to get to have both, and I'm very excited that we are. Because I was given the choice between noodles and pot pie. And then we had a noodle bowl the other day, and we're having pot pie today.
Nice.
Next.
This was an illusion. It's what's now and what's later.
Someone really wants to play.
So you ready to talk about Gru?
Despicable Me.
One of the nice things, and one of the reasons why we always try to find some children's stories for these particular episodes, is children's stories by their nature have to be simplified. But it also means it's a lot easier to understand and see the steps that happen throughout the story. And so, like, Despicable Me is a great case in point of a redemption arc, because we are shown through some simple flashbacks what caused Gru to want to become evil. And it's his mother. Mm-hmm. His mother's neglect of him really provoked his toxic behavior and traits.
And also her judgment of even his little accomplishments, his child appropriate accomplishments. Yeah. Like, yeah. Way to make him feel small. I mean, these are big accomplishments for little kids.
The macaroni rocket.
It was a great rocket.
And then he got it to fly. That was impressive.
And she's like, like, I'd like to see you do it.
And so we then understand how Gru's redemption arc is to get these three little absolutely adorable girls. I mean, bravo to whoever character designed those girls, because they are all adorable in their own way.
I want to adopt all three of them.
I believe Satan did that.
Like, they are some puppy level cuteness.
Oh my God.
And And through his essentially treating them the way he wanted to be treated as a child helps, redeem him and heal his own toxicity,
Mm-hmm.
because his inner child is represented through these girls. And we see him become less toxic as he gets to do the parenting for them that he wanted as a kid. And so he can forgive himself and his experiences as time goes on. Also, they do a good job of reasons why he is stuck with these kids.
Yes.
And then not stuck with them and, suddenly regretting this but life is better with them.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Also,
also
they
I do.
appreciate him for who he is. When he destroys that arcade stand with the impossible to knock down little rocket ship, and Agnes is like, yes, let's do another one. Like, that they appreciate him just exactly for who he is. Somebody with very powerful weaponry who, is trying to get them the toys.
Which is one of the most honest things I've ever seen in a children's movie.
Yeah, because, like, let's be honest, little children, they're all psychopaths. It's a good fit for crew. Hi, Nia. How are you?
Also, I loved their bomb beds of like
The little
great
bomber
design.
beds, their little missile beds or whatever.
Deactivated ones.
Yeah, mostly. So you should be mostly okay.
Don't toss and turn too much.
Oh, I love it.
The juice box with the Iron Maiden.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Totally children safe in this house.
Right? Absolutely fine.
And we also another thing that I appreciate, because it's a kid's story, so again we have to simplify things, is the reason we have the dog, because I still don't believe that's actually a dog. I don't know what that is, but that's dog-like.
It's a hairy piranha. It's a hairy lane piranha is how I look at it.
But that represents and is a stand-in, like a literal physical stand-in for Gru's emotional self.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason we know it is it acts very aggressive and violent, but when it's shown affection, it runs. It is absolutely afraid and fearful of affection. But once it feels it, it relaxes into us like, yes, this is what I want.
Mm-hmm.
But it runs so much, as angry and mean as it acts. And so we get an easy sense of how Gru changes by having just a literal stand-in for his emotional self.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like a piranha on land? Like,
Yes,
is that a
it's
land piranha?
I'm absolutely convinced it's a land piranha. The moment I saw it, I was like, that's a land piranha. And we do see that when the dog starts sleeping in Agnes's bed, but at the foot, not like up next to her, like most dogs would want to be, closer to being petted while they fall asleep. But he's like, no, I'll just at the foot. He wants to be close, but not like actively comforted. That closeness is all that he can stand, but it is still very comforting, and Agnes is okay with that being it. She's not like dragging him up toward her so she can pet the doggy. She accepts the dog for the amount of closeness he can stand, which is really how the girls act with Gru and the minions and everyone. They are happy to just take people as they are rather than demanding they change around them.
Wait, what? They actually show compassion?
I know, those girls are pretty wonderful.
And another odd factor in Despicable Me that, I had to have a discussion with Gloria about was it is a French movie. It is very much, it's a European movie. It's got, American voice actors, but for the most part, everyone who works on it is in Europe, and I think a small contingent in Japan, if I remember right.
I think Illumination is based in France.
Yeah, it's a French movie. Like, it's French producers, at least say French artists. putting it together. So it is very French. The visuals are very French. Very French. Tom's like, is
There's
this the
mime.
French idea of suburbia? And I'm like, I guess so.
But I mean, but the part I found interesting, Glory was definitely had some thoughts afterwards she wasn't sure about, was the masculinity
Mm-hmm.
of was
like,
Gru very masculine, and
Is
it's like
he a eunuch?
Gru is very European masculine, not necessarily American masculine, and it does bring up the cultural differences of masculinity is a social construct, and so it changes depending on the society you're in.
Mhm.
But and the easy way I had to like prove in shorthand is in a live action version, you could have Gerard Depardieu stand in for Gru.
Oh yeah, easily.
And it works perfectly. And Gerard Depardieu is, despite Americans' views, considered incredibly masculine.
I always considered him very masculine, but as Tom pointed out, Gerard Depardieu and our father very similar. And that is why, because like, of course, like me, I'm like, my father is a manly man. But Tom's like, yeah, Dad was not a manly man by American standards, and I'm like, what? But
and so yes, he is toxically masculine through the first half of the movie, and then we see him change. Even with that skinny scarf. I mean, if there's no other way to prove this is French, he's a large man with a skinny scarf.
I want to debate you, but I cannot.
We have given this quite a bit. That's actually what we were talking about last night when I lost track of time. Was like we were talking about Despicable Me masculinity. Because there are differences in American masculinity and French / Western European masculinity. And it's not just American masculinity, I assume comes in like red plaid or buffalo check. It's not just that.
There is the orange jumpsuit from Vector. Or
Is that supposed to
tracksuit.
be American?
I don't know. I assume so because of the
No, Vector is Eastern European.
Oh, okay. Yes, because like
that's straight up
Adidas
Adidas masculinity.
Okay.
Although in my head, watching it now, Vector and Gru is Microsoft and Apple in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah.
Like, this is how they both acted towards each other.
You're not wrong.
And like, especially if you had to read trade papers at the time. Oh yeah, Microsoft was trying to find out more of what was going on with Apple, and Apple really didn't actually know what it was doing, but it kept doing an air of superiority that everyone just sort of ran along with it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're right about it. That is what was happening.
It wasn't that products were superior. It's just they had a better sense of, we're not going to do this product till every part will keep up with a user's expectation, versus everyone else did it ahead of time.
Mm-hmm.
Sony and Microsoft all did these products way before Apple did, but Apple waited till the processing power caught up and it was cheap enough to produce at a profitable level.
Mm-hmm.
And there's Microsoft going, how are they doing this profit? But it is that ridiculous. Like, it really was so much of like, I was watching this going, I wonder if that was the origin. But going back, of Gru is, it's such a simple story. You can really, if you need the beats for how a redemption arc works in a short story, just take notes on Despicable Me. We see his mom in a flashback, and then we see his mom present, and we see how she does approve of his parenting. And again, that helps Gru grow up and forgive himself and all these grudges he was holding on to. Even against his mom, who really still hasn't apologized for her behaviors and needs to.
Boy, did that feel relevant.
But getting parents to apologize is its own miracle that some people can't even believe in their fiction.
No.
And just hearing you say those words, Like, I know the English language, but I feel like you just went off into some other language for a moment there.
There are these shorts, like TikTok shorts, of people who are from like South America, and they make their family watch Encanto. They're like, like pretending to be asleep while they watch it. The adults are like, yeah, no.
Wait, you mean family dysfunction? Family dysfunction was the villain all along?
No.
What? That's impossible.
And I mean, that's what good art does, is it holds up a mirror and lets people get that conversation started.
Mm.
Of, here we are at the beginning of the movie, but we could be like at the end of the movie.
What do you say?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, one of the not as well discussed, but I think great uses for The Last Airbender was its way of normalizing multiculturalism. That it's okay to have a lot of different cultures mix, and it's not like colonialism where one has to supersede all the others. That, that's what we're seeing in Gen Z, is this, we can all have our own perspective at the same time. That's fine.
Yeah.
It's not my way or the highway. But again, that's the toxicity we see in all these movies of there's only one option and everything else is wrong, and that's what makes them toxic. I mean, you hear Scrooge talking about, if I pay them any more, I will go bankrupt. Even though we all know, no, Scrooge, you won't.
You've got oodles.
And the duck version has an entire vault that he can dive in.
Mm-hmm. Our grandmother used to say that, of like, oh, I can't give you any more. I can't give you any money because then I won't have any for myself. The woman was in her early 80s when she passed away. And when she died, she had multiple millions of dollars in her estate. More than she could have spent had she lived 100 to 120 for 40 more years. And she still could not have spent all that money. Because she didn't travel much. She didn't buy extravagant things. She had nice things that lasted a long time. She wasn't the kind of person who bought like Imelda Marcos levels of shoes or other clothes or anything like that. But she was just so sure she wouldn't have any. And that what's more, the older I got, the more I realized she also was sure we wouldn't take care of her. And it's like, are you kidding? I would have always taken care of her, even though she wasn't that kind or generous with me. Mm-hmm. She wasn't even that compassionate with me. But, I mean, like, I'm not going to let her go die in the street, for heaven's sakes. And I used to think she was preposterous for thinking that, even though she'd already passed away by that point. I thought she was just like, there was something wrong with her mind that she thought that. And then I found people, real people I know in personal life, who literally let their siblings die in the street rather than take them in. Who were not siblings who could not care for themselves anymore. Who were physically or mentally unable to care for themselves, and they died in the streets. Literally in a ditch. And I was like, oh, well, I guess Grandma Marty wasn't that misfounded with this idea, although she definitely did not seem to, like, for instance, know, like, her grandchildren adequately enough to know. Because, like, when she died, I was, like, I think 19 years old. And I had already been begging her to move in with me. Because she would always, every time I talked to her, like, I talked to her about once a month. At the time, and every time I talk to her, she's like talking about how she's so frail and, worried about what her future will hold and how she'll die in like a hospital being abused by orderlies or something. This was her fear. And I'm like, well, come live with me. Or do you want me to move out there? Because she lived in Tucson, Arizona. And I was like, I'll live there. I'll go to college in Tucson. It's no big deal. And she's like, no, it's fine. It's like, do you?
Some people just like to complain.
Yeah. Versus, like, I will live with you. We'll be roommates. I'm younger. I will happily wash all the dishes and take out the trash and all this. And we shall be friends. And oh my God, Roy is too cute.
He's wanting to go outside so badly.
Oh, sweet baby. He's trying to be so patient. What is it?
He is. I'm rendering one more thing. Hang on, dude.
But yeah, of like this not willing to take me at my word of, I really do want to take care of you and know you are not going to cramp my quote youthful lifestyle, as she used to call it. No, you'll feel that I'm cramping your youthful lifestyle. Ma'am, what? I work in customer service at a cell phone company and I am going to college. I do not have a quote youthful lifestyle. I am barely making ends meet, but I am happy to have you move in with me, or I'll move to another apartment where you have your own bedroom and everything. Or I can move out there and, I will keep a watch on you, but I will still go to college and it'll be fine. And just unwilling to believe me that I am not, I guess, as selfish as she is. I don't know. I don't know. I still have a hard time kind of wrapping myself around this, this sort of Scrooge type character, like who was a real person in our family.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. We've had quite a few of those in mine, and I don't, my brain don't work like that.
Exactly.
And I can't even get myself there to even conceive of writing someone who conceives of the world in that way. It just, it boggles my mind.
Well, that is why in every redemption story, you have to find an outside character to help change the perspective. Because to be toxic, they have to have solidified this thought. They have to think this is the right way. And so you have to bring in other characters that show that the world is different than they assume it always is. That is what the girls in Despicable Me do. That is what Marla Singer does in the movie version of Fight Club. And just every toxic one even in Groundhog's Day with Phil, it's him seeing the world through Andy McDowell's character's eyes. Mm-hmm. That eventually, in his pursuit of her of, I can get anyone, he inadvertently changes himself because he sees the world differently from her perspective and goes, wait, it can be a nicer place. You have to find something that changes their perspective, because until that perspective changes internally, they will never change.
I need to take this boy outside.
Okay.
He's not stopping whining. Are you, sir?
Oh, baby.
Don't you understand? The cuteness needs respect.
And also street bread. Must go find some street bread.
Know it.
Someday it'll be a great musical.
On the streets of Toronto. All right. See ya.
Okay.
See ya. But yeah, to me at least, the two secrets to redemption arcs is you have to first be okay writing a character that thinks they're good even though they're being toxic, and then finding something that they would respond to that will change their perspective.
I want Sasha to gladly take it, just so you know. She really wants you to know.
Someone brought me a sample of the Popeye filling, and the dog was trying to take it from me.
It wasn't yours. I know you didn't get one.
I
We
have
see
absolutely
Roy.
no doubt Roy will enjoy his book.
Yes. And the same with Last Airbender of without Uncle Iroh.
Do you have some to show?
Oh, ho,
Oh, the
ho.
baby.
Somebody
Look
brought
at that.
Brian brought me a sample of the pot pie filling, and she is very upset and trying to take it from my mouth.
Right.
I was gonna say,
That's
she's
how
like,
good this smells.
you tasted it, now spit it up for me. I need to taste it too.
It's very good, but oh my goodness, the dog.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially, we see Uncle Iroh and Uncle Iroh's and the tragedy of Uncle Iroh's son that causes Uncle Iroh to spend this extra effort to help redeem Zuko. And it takes a long time. Like, it takes a lot of experience for Zuko to finally go, wait a minute, maybe he does have a point.
And that is one of the things I liked about the Doctor Who reboot, was in talking about tragedy happens to everyone. No one's life is absolutely free of tragedy. No matter how rich or powerful, how weak, how or homeless somebody may be, like, no matter their resources and their surroundings and lifestyle, everybody has tragedy. But it is the choice you make about, will you allow these tragedies to harden your heart or soften your heart? And there is no in between. Nobody is indifferent when tragic things happen in their life. But either you make a choice of either you allow it to soften you or you allow it to harden you. And what we see, like, for instance, in the stories listed below in the movies, of these are characters who have had tragedies in their past and it hardened their heart. And now this is their redemption arc where they make a choice to soften themselves, i.e. to open up, to be vulnerable with others. This is their journey. And that is what we're here for, is we're here for this journey. And that is the decision that we see these characters make. But it's something like I have thought about for years, because Tom introduced me to Doctor Who during an incredibly difficult moment in my life. And there it is, like, yeah, I see the Doctor has had so many tragedies and he has tried his best to allow this to soften him. And that is what I then endeavored to do also. Also, to be perfectly honest, like, really my redemption arc started when I got this puppy, Cassie. And this was my little baby that I could, like, take care of and really make up for, the inadequacies of my own upbringing and love her the way I wish I had been loved. And you can't just ignore the pleas of such an adorable, sweet, lovable cuddle bug.
And that's something we need to be thinking about more, is how we have changed over time. There's, in just talking about toxicity, there's this weird static misconception or misperception of identity that pervades all of these toxic characters. And it's kind of necessary for them because it shows that they have stagnated in some way and that they need to have that stagnation taken out. But we see this in ourselves and we see it in our culture, and learning to see how I remember how I was as a child. And I was very different as a child than I was as a teenager. I was somebody who needed to get hit. I needed to get hit a lot. I had all the bad takes, all of them. It was bad. And I remember my 20s. I remember my 30s. I have been several different people, which is why I generally, when I refer to my past, I will make passing references to so many lifetimes ago. Like, this was in a different life. And that's not a frivolous statement. It's because I remember that person that I was. I remember how they figuratively died and this new person was born. I remember those stages in my own transformation over time. And it allows us as humans to offer grace to other people who are still going through the transition, but it helps us to figure out how to write these characters and to interact with the world in and of itself. If Gru had been evil all along, we would not care about him. This is Robert Galbraith's biggest problem, I think, in the Harry Potter books, is when we finally get the reveal of Voldemort's backstory, he was always evil.
Mm-hmm.
There nothing, like, you can't even really say that him being in the orphanage, the trauma of being in the orphanage broke him. He was broken already. He was.
Yeah, they talk about before the orphanage and just, it was evil growing up among evil.
He was from an evil family who did evil things. His mother did forced naughties on his dad. Like, it's evil all the way down. And so he becomes what before this is an interesting villain, because you're wondering, like, what could make somebody just kill a child without even thinking about it, in book four, right? He just murders a kid, just doesn't even think about it.
Mm-hmm.
That callousness of, get rid of the spare, just, that you wonder about that. And then it's turtles all the way down. It's just evil all the way down. They're no longer interesting. They've lost all of their interestingness. This is one of the reasons why Marvel movies get so much credit for some of, especially the more recent villains. Gore's backstory is moving and gives an amazing way to end his villain arc. Talking about redemption arcs there. Thanos has a very interesting backstory. He's wrong, and for anybody who thinks that he's right, the Malthusians have never been right. They've been saying this for 200 years now. They have always been wrong. Anyway, but you can understand where he's coming from. He experienced this trauma of his planet going to war, where he felt like he had the solution that could have prevented the war, and he's trying to save the universe, right? We see him as, he's not evil all the way down. He's trying to do a good. Even in the early Thor movies, you can see Loki is just playing around with it until he realizes, what? Something was stolen from me? My birthright was taken from me? And we see, that's the origin of him going from being trickster Loki to villain Loki. We understand that. It's relatable. And so many movies, not even just superhero movies or fantasy movies or sci-fi movies, so many movies just have these plastic wooden villains that they've always been evil. No one's always been evil. And you again, like you were saying, you have to be careful when you show the backstory to your villain, because people will start to identify with them. Well, if you can do that in a way like with Zuko in the arcs, right? When you're talking about Gru, I have a hard time watching the Despicable Me movies, because I look at Gru, especially at the beginning of the first movie, and I go, there, but by the grace of God go I. Like, having that hindsight of knowing his backstory for you. Yeah, knowing his backstory, like, how did I not become the villain? Like, how? What?
It's okay. It's pointed out in the movie. The difference between you and Gru is Gru found a evil bank that wanted to do evil in the world, and so kept loaning him money for very unprofitable evilness.
Ventures?
Yeah. I mean, Gru's living in the suburbs. His evil sucks. It is not profitable.
It's not profitable. Like, Charlie, if you'd found an evil bank who was willing to finance your, ideas back then, maybe.
Oh, yeah. But
since you didn't have anyone to bankroll you.
But see, that's
redemption came instead. Hi, Brian.
But that's what makes Gru compelling, though, is you can see, like, Scrooge is compelling because I was that kid that was picked on, that didn't have the most supportive family. I think all of us, to some respect, whether it was real or imagined, felt that as a kid, right? It's relatable. It's something that we can connect to. When the abject villainy is born out of, like, I don't know what made Zack Snyder's Superman into a villain other than maybe white privilege. Like, there's like because he's obviously not the hero. He is cast in every possible way to be the villain, even in the sequels, where we see him as this almost fascistic overlord that must be overturned. Like, Lex Luthor is the closest thing to a hero in those stories in the way that he's actually framed and written. But what would make him a villain? You're trying to tell me he's a bad guy. What made him this way? What made this version of Superman decide I'm going to just wantonly murder someone? What did this? Why is this Batman this way? We don't have any of those questions answered. And they just hang out there, and the stories are vacant. The characters are hollow. And the redemption arc in Dawn of Justice means nothing. It becomes this joke of, oh, your mother and my mother have same name.
The most common American female name at the time. What a coincidence.
And it's because we don't know. We apparently maybe something bad happened to a Robin, because we see a like graffitied Robin costume in the Batcave, right? But we have no idea this Batman's backstory. It's the first time we've met this Batman. Why does he feel this sense of this burning desire to destroy this man? We have no sense of motivation. So his redemption in realizing, maybe I shouldn't do the murder. Well, why were you wanting to do the murder in the first place? I don't even understand why. Like, I get it. He kind of destroyed a city. That bad. But you don't seem to care about people that much. So I can't see you doing this out of the kindness of your own heart. So since all we know is the standard trope Batman stuff, parents died when kid, oh sad, saw bats, got scared, decided put on costume, beat people up. That's all we know about his backstory, which honestly did not have to even be put into the movie, because who does not know that about Batman? Like, even if you've never seen a Batman movie, I'm pretty sure you can recite Batman's origin story because it's so ingrained in our culture at this point, right?
I agree.
I mean, everyone will probably say, oh, his mother wore pearls.
Yeah.
Because so many different versions have all been, and the pearls ripped, and apparently these were some cheap pearl. This was a cheap pearl necklace because the pearls went everywhere instead of each one being knotted on.
Yep.
Like, apparently they were not as rich as they pretended to be.
Or this is like the last thing that she had before she married into money or something. I don't know. But there's a backstory to that necklace. But that's why the redemption arc in that movie fails, because that's why that movie completely falls apart. It's meant to be the redemption of Batman and the creation of a hero. Both Superman and Batman are being redeemed in this story. They see what they did wrong. Batman has them fight, destroying a whole bunch of cargo that hopefully nobody will wonder where their package is. But they're at least not destroying a city, technically, so better. And Superman is like, maybe I should have just sacrificed myself and gone the full Jesus. And does that for no reason when Wonder Woman could have used the spear. But, toxic masculinity still exists. So why let a woman do what a man can just kill himself for? Both of the redemption arcs in this movie make no sense. Because you have to have a backstory. You have to understand, well, why did Superman not think about the people? Because that really doesn't make sense in Man of Steel, because he lets his father die because think of the people, right? Think of what will happen if they find out that you're here, right? There's half a solipsism in there, and also half of we need to protect people from you. Which again, why Lex Luthor seems to be the hero in this series, right? Because even his dad, even Clark's dad, basically has Lex Luthor's opinion of Superman. Don't use your superpowers. Never let anyone know you're special. Just let people die and pretend to be normal. Right? So how is this redemption ever supposed to feel redeemed? How are either of these characters supposed to feel redeemed?
Because the way redemption in, let's be honest, simplistic storytelling works is somebody's personality was twisted by an event. That is the event you tell in their backstory, so that in the future, when we see an event twisted 180 in the other direction, we see why they are now back to, more socially normal. Is they have been unbent from the events that corrupted them. But if we don't see how one correlates to the other, it's not really a redemption.
And it really doesn't work when literally he's so far gone he needs to be redeemed, but literally just saying save Martha redeems him. Like, this is some, I don't even know what kind of weird mystic thought is attempting to try to be
Can I just
having that.
how about I just quote Dogma for this one?
What you got?
Someone sold their soul to get the box office up on that one.
Right?
That piece of shit.
But that's when when we're talking about the masculine redemption arc, this is a masterclass in how to mess it up.
Yeah.
In every possible way. Because when you start asking yourself the questions, why doesn't this story work? Because it's not the actors. The actors put in the effort. I mean, that's probably the most emotion I've ever seen Ben Affleck have in anything Ben Affleck has ever done, except for maybe Argo. He's pretty good in Argo. But, I mean, the actors...
You know how much he loves Batman. Like,
Right.
You know how much he campaigned to be Batman.
It's true.
And then afterwards, it's like, take me out. I never want to do another Batman movie again. Like, how bad is that storytelling experience? When someone who spent 20 years campaigning to be Batman's like, don't put me in another one to get me out of my contract now.
Mm-hmm.
Because you can see the actors really struggling to make this story work. You can see the poor special effects artists trying to figure out how to make any of this legible. Like, because it's so like, oh, I can just imagine the poor meetings where they're like, this is going to look like mud. We can't have all of these effects layered on top of each other. It's just going to be mud. We can't do that. And Zach being like, what? Just heighten the exposure?
I mean,
Increase
I'm
the
so
contrast.
sad.
Increase the contrast. It'll be fine.
I'm so sad Laura's not here, so we could just have her make the special effects worker's face.
Yeah.
When you see the different layers, each studio has to work on the same scene on. And you know it's going to be mud. Make the face. I know they all make the same one.
But it's one of the saddest things that they took two of the most, whether you consider them the best, worst, or what have you, the most iconic elements of both of these characters' story, be that The Dark Knight Returns or the Death of Superman, two of the most iconic storylines that both of these characters have, and they wasted it. Like, you're never going to be able to do the first live action version of those again by making it a weird redemption movie for both characters that it doesn't make sense why or how they're being redeemed by it. I'm not a big fan of outlining. I think I'm fairly on the record about being like the queen of the pantsers. But like, if you're doing a redemption arc, like I have a character that in one of the stories I'm working on that does have a redemption arc, and I have all of the beats written out for it. As much as I don't like outlining, because I need to make sure that you're seeing, well, why were they bad? What starts changing their mind? How do they dig out of the hole? How do they climb back out? Because that's very much their story, is having to dig back out of all of this darkness that they're in. But even I, as a pantser, outline the heck out of that and have not actually written this story because I'm not convinced I figured out the perfect nuances of the beats so the redemption arc will make sense. You have to have that figured out first. And you can see when it wasn't. You can just see.
And I mean, that's partly why we chose the movies we did, particularly like Despicable Me and A Christmas Carol and so on. You really can just follow the beats if you're not sure, if it's your first time trying to write a redemption arc. And that these are the things to keep track of.
And these are all the different kinds of redemption arcs. You know, the
Mhm.
different perspectives.
And well, I would recommend somebody read the book rather than watch the movie. Like the movie's very good, but it's. I've never understood Hollywood that they made the third book in a series into the movie and didn't make any of the books on either side of it into movies. So it's so out of context. But Wong Delu wrote a wonderful series called the Iron Crane trilogy, Pentology. 5 books. Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon is the third book in this series. And what is so missing, if you've not read the books, is how much this is Li Mubai's redemption. He is the reason his brother died. He messed up and his brother died. The entire point of the story is the redemption of Li Mubai. And as somebody who has read the books and who loves the books so much, I can watch this movie and you can see, because every actor that was involved in that, from Michelle Yeoh to, all the way down, read the books and knew the story that they were telling. All of that nuance is there, but if you're not familiar with the story, this is the problem. Like, you can see they try to pepper in some of the backstory where, why aren't they a couple? Because he was betrothed to his brother. She was betrothed to his brother. But it doesn't really go into the details of, and in a very bad mistake, fighting Jade Fox, he got his brother killed. And so he already previously had feelings for her, for Xulian. So he would have completely betrayed, like the ultimate betrayal of his brother would be like, oh, I accidentally got you killed and I get your girl. Yay! Which is why they can't be together. That's not expressed in the film version as well as it should have been, and why most people look at that as not the redemption story that it should be. And I wanted to bring that up because it is a very well-made movie, but because so much of the backstory, there's, like I said, there's literally 2 books in the series that happened before this one, and it's not filled in because, well, they knew most of the audience for this film probably had read the series because they were looking at this more for the Chinese market, and hopefully maybe the American market might like it, but and it was a surprise that it was popular over here. If you've read the books, that movie reads differently. And if you've seen that movie and liked it, and you can get a copy of the Iron Crane Pentology, I highly recommend reading at least the first 3 books and then watching the movie again and seeing how much that backstory, when we're talking about the importance of knowing where your villain comes from. Why is Li Mubai a villain? He acts like he feels like he's a villain, like he did a bad thing. He went up to the mountain to atone for his sins. Like, he acts like this through the entire movie, but it's not thoroughly explained to us what happened and what went wrong. Because it will read so much differently when you know everything that happened. And you see this as this beautiful redemption story of a man who, it was a mistake. It wasn't really his fault, but he blames himself so much for what happened. And
Well, I have an opposite side for you as well.
What you got?
So there's the one where if you don't have enough backstory, redemption ends up feeling a bit hollow, and it doesn't hit your audience as hard as it should.
Mm-hmm.
And it's tragically beautiful, as they often call it. The opposite side is where we don't want our monsters' background.
Mm-hmm.
If you give your monsters the background, they are no longer monsters. They are people. And to me, the case in point of this, of, who did this, and everyone has, it's, 20 plus years later, no one's forgiven, is in Star Trek, the Borg.
mm-hmm.
The Borg were beloved as monsters, that they were truly right there with the 70s and 80s new zombie creation of something truly scary for the psyche.
Mm-hmm.
And then what did they do? They explained the Borg. They gave their background, their history, their behaviors, how it all started, relatively. And the fans got upset at this, because now they can't look at them as just a monster.
Yep.
They have to look at them as people, and that is not the same kind of story sensation.
And it's really important to understand what kind of a story you're wanting to write. This to me is the biggest mistake with like Prometheus. Again, trying to give an origin story. The idea that an android from Weyland-Yutani may have invented the xenomorphs takes away. They're not exotic anymore. They're just a bioweapon that got out of hand. They're not
By an evil corporation.
by an evil corporation. You've not only robbed them of their mystery, but at the same time, why is Weyland-Yutani still trying to get their hands on them? They invented them. And I'm sure the third movie that he was going to make was going to make some veiled attempt at answering that question. But
apparently it's back on.
Well,
Aliens something is back on.
we'll see. As much as I don't like Chappie or some of the other movies that the other gentleman did, I like his proposal a lot better for what to do. And the fact that he got everyone, including Sigourney Weaver, to sign on. James Cameron has been literally publicly, anyway, whole thing. But you got to be very careful with taking that allure away. It's why they keep retconning all of the horror movies. If you're trying to make a true villain, an unredeemable villain, I can't know Michael Myers' childhood in detail. I can't know all of the ins and outs that made your bad guy the bad guy. Because now I have such a complex sensation about him. He's not a monster. He's not the other. Monsters have to be the other, or they're not a monster. Like, it can't hit you on that instinctual level.
Yeah, we can't know how Leatherface was raised.
Because
I think they're working on that.
Half the terror of the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre is seeing Bubba with his family and going, I can't even imagine what this would have been like. And leaving it at that. Leave it at that. Because monsters have to be creatures. It's one of the few things that Lovecraft was 100% right about. You know, the greatest fear is the fear of the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
And the more you explore a villain, the more that can fall apart. The one exception, and I know some people, I don't know if on screen would fight me on this, but some people would definitely fight me on this, would be the exploration of the character of Darth Vader, who has become a very good tragic villain. And the more we know about him, knowing his backstory, getting to see what they did with him in Obi-Wan, that rage, that anger.
So the difference though between Darth Vader and Michael Myers, say, is that even in the original usage of Darth Vader, for the original trilogy, was at the end still a redemption story for Darth Vader. The whole, was planned out of, they've said the reason Luke is wearing this black outfit throughout the whole movie and the inside of the black outfit is white is so you think Luke has fallen and we can have, the surprise reveal that Luke never fell, that Luke knew this trap was coming and so was playing for it. And Luke succeeded by redeeming Darth Vader. And so all we're doing when we see Darth Vader's origins is humanizing this character more, but Darth Vader had already been worked on being redeemed. So it was never going to stay just a monster.
But the way they kept him a monster is what impresses me. That's what I was trying to say. I misspoke.
Okay, I got you better.
Because his monster nature is born out of just blind rage and anger. Mm-hmm. He is unpredictable, and that unpredictable nature allows him to still be a scary foe. When you see him fighting Obi-Wan in the Obi-Wan miniseries, when you see him in Rogue One, that beautiful moment in Rogue One where he just comes in and is just destroying everything in his path. he is an unpredictable, unstoppable monster because his rage has been kicked on. He's the Incredible Hulk, just rampaging through, methodically destroying everything.
And that is the requirement for a monster, is the unpredictability. If you can predict how they'll act, they're not really monstrous anymore.
And that's how
Darth Vader, with that rage, he's not even really that self-preserving. We see, he is ready to die so many times throughout the series.
And that's how they're able to have their cake and eat it too. It's one of the few get out of jail free cards I've seen somebody use where the villain's backstory, their redemption arc, but they can keep him as a monster. And it's because you still have that unpredictable rage, that switch that can just flip. It's why it works well with the Hulk. And I'm really curious, especially if we're going to get World War Hulk, how they're going to do that, where we get to see the dark side come back out. Because the rage is there, and the rage makes you unpredictable, and the rage makes you still capable of being a monster. And it's an interesting way to play with that. And one of the few exceptions I can think of because the Hulk in the comics, they really play with that, is that there's a difference between simmering anger and violent rage. And that's the difference between the different manifestations of the Hulk. Is it his simmering anger, or is it his just violent, literally world breaker rage? I don't know of many other get out of jail free cards where you can maintain the monster and have that sympathetic backstory for them at the same time. I like looking for exceptions because they help to prove the rule.
Yeah, you need that unpredictability, and you need to believe that they're not going to be logical. They're not going to be obvious in the way they're acting. And yeah, heightened emotionality is always a good way to do it.
I know when I've had coworkers frequently have emotional outbursts at work, I felt terrorized, but that is monstrous. It's like you have to walk on eggshells around them.
And it's why, What If completely skipped Thanos' redemption arc. We just meet him redeemed, because that's a whole lot that they'd have to unpack to try to figure out how you turn that monster into anything remotely a good person. So I don't know, he had a heart-to-heart with T'Challa, and you sit back and go, yeah, I could see that, because T'Challa was a really good guy. And I'm sure enough discussion, T'Challa could bring somebody around. Okay, I'm fine with it. Let's just, Chadwick Boseman is the king. Let's move on. You can just kind of roll with it, but that has to happen off screen, because one, it doesn't take away from his frightfulness, but also at the same time, it's just, how much you would have to unpack this story.
I can't remember the story offhand. It's just, it's one of those, I remembered the elements. And to me, the way you can keep a monster, even with backstory, is just its heightened emotions. And emotions are not logical.
Yep.
And one, I can't remember, any of it other than it was some mother type person who was, truly living up to the "I love you to death" of their love was destructive and was, truly killing people.
Mm-hmm.
Through the no, I need to take care of you.
Well, I mean, to some degree, Elvira from Tiny Toons was like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm going to love you and squeeze you till you die. But I mean, she really didn't have that much malicious intent. It was just, she did not know how to love non-destructively. I mean, we see that in little kids until they're taught. So does anybody have final thoughts about the idea of redemption arcs, and male redemption arcs in particular, and redeeming yourself through your gender or despite your gender? I don't know. We've been talking about gender now for a month and a half, and I'm like, I don't know what is anymore.
every time I talk about gender, I hear Neil from the Liberal Cooks talking about, so I guess this is the moment I get canceled. Because if you've not seen their wonderful video on gender, the repeating beat is, now don't say the thing or you'll get canceled. Oh, you're going to say it anyway, aren't you? But, to beat my dead horse, gender is performance. Gender is performative. And that, to me, is the salvation of both the male and female genders. I can't remember whose video I was watching the other day, but I was watching another it was a clip from a debate in somebody else's video. That's why I can't remember who actually said it. But they were in a debate with somebody who was arguing that we non-binary folk are trying to destroy gender. And while gender abolition would be amazing, the goal is to get people to realize there are variant shades of gender. There's not just one masculine. There's not just one feminine. There are many masculines and many feminines and many shades of in between and on the outside that aren't even related to these two poles in general. And getting characters to a place where they can see through that and realize, if you're writing the feminine redemption arc, maybe you're just a tomboy. Maybe putting on that dress is one of the things that's making you hate society and wanting to burn it down. Maybe you're a tom girl if you're writing a masculine character who, maybe isn't fully non-binary, but, likes to paint their nails and have the long hair and just have some frilly things every now and then. Maybe that's who you are, and that you want to burn society down because of the rigid roles that are being placed upon you. And being able to explore that in a much more honest way that isn't so set in stone and that isn't locked in the binary is one of the, honestly, the easiest ways to redeem a character that has fallen into either toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. It really is the shortcut, easy way out of just, you're performing somebody else's gender. Somebody assigned you the wrong role.
Right? Like, tomboy is not strictly the, quote, traditional feminine gender. Tomboy is its own gender, so tom girl would also be its own gender. That there's a lot of genders. There's a lot of, like, say subset genders within other genders within other genders. It's a onion of gendering.
Yep.
And that maybe you were assigned the wrong subgender. And now you need to go on a journey and find your proper subgender that works for you. And you might find that you've got to invent a new one, right? Go hang out with the non-binaries. They'll probably have great ideas.
Just go to any Mogai site and just start scrolling around. There are millions of genders there by now, probably. I know that there were thousands, if not hundreds of thousands last time I looked. Just go to a Mogai site. Somebody's probably written a thing about your gender that you didn't even know you needed, because that's all that Mogai is.
But yeah, like, just figure out your own identity. I think, like, to be born like cisgendered and heterosexual is both a blessing and a curse. Because, like, you already get, like, here's your little boxes. We've already put you in them. Off you go to the playground. And so there's no idea that you need to then necessarily go on a journey to actually find the right boxes for you. Or maybe you don't live in a box. Maybe you live in an aquarium, or you're just a blob and you're like on dirt. I don't know. You need to figure out you. But, like, I've talked to so many, cishet folks who didn't even know that it was, quote, allowed to go on a journey to figure out your own subgender. And I'm like, what? No. Like, I literally met someone who thought you couldn't still call yourself a woman if you didn't wear skirts and dresses. And I'm like, ma'am, what? They're called culottes. They are very cool. It is in the name. Like, you just do what you want to do. Like, and they were like, no, I just thought that they would, like, take away my female card. And I'm like, who the one? And also, do you have this card in your wallet? I would like to see this card somebody has issued you.
There's a fine line between a cliche and an aphorism. Um, and I debate where the thing I'm about to say fits on that line. I think it may be both. But, the idea that the unexamined life is not worth living, be wary of anything that tells you, oh, no, you don't have to examine this part of your life. Just accept it. If anyone says just accept it and move on, maybe there should be some examination there.
I like to think of it as how people talk about family, friends, and found family. Of your family is the starting party you were assigned to.
Truly, you're assigned at birth.
Yeah,
for most people.
And gender is the same thing. It was what you originally signed. You can see how it works for you. If it doesn't, guess what? You can go find a new group. Hence LFG. For anyone who does tabletop role-playing games, of looking for group.
Yep.
Looking for other like-minded people. You can do that as well for gender.
Yep.
And the other thing of my shorthand trick to figuring out your character, especially when you want to do redemption or really anything, if you want to figure out motivations and how to get your character through a story, is your characters, there's always 2 questions you have to ask about your character to get them to move through a story. They are always afraid and running from something. They're always trying to avoid. What is their fear? And then they're always running to something, their want. And once you can figure this out, there is the differential that causes the story to happen. So that is why in a redemption, we find out what they're running from, which is what twisted them, what broke them, what changed them from a regular, decent person. And then what they are running to is what would change them back. What is it that they are also want to be? And that is they want to be better. They want to be more joyous. They want to be happier. They want to be less anxious. And the solution is the end of the story. And that's what to keep in mind in any of these. Is what are they afraid of? What is that fear? That it will always motivate them to move forward because they want to avoid the wood chipper behind them of their past. And they want to find the Elysian fields of the fantasy world where everything just works. And what do they think that solution is? That is the end of, the story arc. As long as you can give that, your readers will be happy.
Very true.
Does anyone else have any final thoughts?
I know the moment where you've watched too many Khadija Bow videos, because I'm like, feed your plants, water your plants, and remember you can always change your mind. Like, any more final thoughts? That's it. Immediately went through my mind.
Well, so for next week, we are going to talk about, let's see, that would be the 19th, September 19th. We're going to talk about characters of various genders who are toxic moving toward less toxic. So essentially mutual redemption arcs. The one that most quickly sprang to my mind was When Harry Met Sally. The 2 main protagonists both start off very toxic.
Yeah.
And then we see them over, what is it, like a 15, 20-year period?
Yeah.
As they very slowly at first, but start progressively moving toward less toxic viewpoints, less toxic behaviors.
You ready to talk about Back to the Future?
Ah, yes, and Back to the Future.
Because Doc and Marty are both toxic at the beginning. If you're stealing nuclear fuel from,
from terrorists, from actual real live terrorists who stole it from the local nuclear power plant.
Yeah. Oh, Back to the Future. That's a trip.
So yeah, we're going to talk about that. We'll talk about Back to the Future. We will talk about When Harry Met Sally, and if anybody thinks of any other movies, please let me know. But it's going to be a super wild time next week, absolutely. And then the week after that, the final episode of this series on September 26th, we're going to talk about female eunuchs because I have thoughts. Lori, female eunuchs, what are those? Do you have examples? Yes, Moana. I am salty years later. Screw you, John Lasseter. Anyway, okay. I'm going to save it 2 weeks from now.
I can't wait for that one.
Laughter, Charlie. It's how I know I'm doing it.
I can't wait for that one. Yeah, the wicked Disney villain laugh came out. Yeah, I'm sorry about that.
No, please do not apologize. It gives me strength.
And, just because we probably won't talk about it at the time, but again, another one, at least to me, is speaking of Dawn of Justice, Superman's girlfriend, wife, I forget what she is at that point. Lois Lane in those movies is a female eunuch.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Even with the back thumb. Because that's where a lot of people get confused over the term female eunuch.
It boggles my mind when people, like real human beings, not like rich people who are like, I shall write screenplays now, but I mean like regular human beings that have lived regular human lives include female eunuch characters. And I'm like, why? Especially when women include female eunuch characters in their stories. And I'm like, why would you do this? Why? So yeah, I have thoughts. I have a lot of thoughts. I hope everybody else joins us and shares their thoughts as well, because I don't want to be the only one up holding the rant stick. But if I have to, I will. Because Tom has had to hear this for literally years, decades now, ever since I found out what a female eunuch was. Like ever since I first heard about Betty Friedan's book title and was like, what is that? How do you castrate a woman? And my mother's like, there are ways. And I'm like, what is that? I was literally a child. And like, she's like, I'll tell you when you're older. And then when I got older, she wouldn't tell me. And I had to like finally talk to other adults, illicit adults, who would like whisper things to me. And then I got in my 20s and the internet blossomed. And I finally like, oh, thank you, internet. So I've been on a journey to learn about how so many people not only want to put women in boxes about here's your tiny little definition of femininity, but then strip away all their sexuality and then strip away any defining part of their gender. And it's like, why? Why are you hateful? Like, can I have nothing? The answer is, it's called misogyny. Anyway, so yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about female eunuch. And yes, a lot of people have internalized misogyny, but we are going to have to examine it through your writing. I know the thing like writers don't want to do, even though all writing is therapy. All writing is therapy. Change my mind.
We'll talk about Umbrella Academy Season 3.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Because most of those sparrows are really...
How many times did I sing, if only we could pass the Bechdel test? Why is it whenever two female characters in Umbrella Academy get together, they can only talk about men?
And you can't even use Victor anymore because Victor's a man.
Yep. Victor be a dude. Suddenly their Bechdel rating plummets. Because they made it clear Victor was always a dude. It's just that Sissy blossomed him into really figuring out himself, but he was always the dude. A very fit dude that they had to cover up with a lot of clothes so nobody could tell the Mavs. Okay, Victor, I see you.
Abs so triggering. Jordan Peterson got himself banned from Twitter twice over them.
Ah, delicious.
I mean, those abs definitely compete with Bieber. with Bieber abs of like, do you even crunch, bro?
So yeah, like we are actually going to talk about Umbrella Academy next week as well, with multiple characters becoming less toxic together. That is very much an ensemble thing, and so yes, let us all get together and express our mutual love for Klaus, who is on the coolest redemption arc over 3 seasons. But we'll talk about all of that. We hope you'll come and talk about all of it with us. And if you are watching this on the replay number 1, bravo to you. You've made it this far. Congratulations. You don't have as much of an attention problem as I do. We would love to hear your comments in the comments. We read all of them, every last one of them.
But yes, for the next 2 weeks, let's talk Umbrella and Doom Patrol.
And then in October, we're going to talk about, the thing writers really care about, marketing and promotion.
It's broken.
It is all broken. So how do you limp along? Well, we've got thoughts. Other people have thoughts. We hope they'll all come. Probably going to send out like a blanket. Everybody's going to get spammed by me of, hey, would you like to come talk about anything? Let me know and I will literally make an episode for you. So we hope you'll join us, and you'll definitely like and subscribe, and please share. Please share this. It's the only way to appease the algorithm is if you share. So again, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. It's why we keep doing it. Bye-bye, everybody. I shall wave you off into the sunset, my darlings. Bye-bye.
So long.